History, as we understand it, begins after the flood. All that came before, if it existed at all, is brushed aside as myth, allegory, or invention. But what if that ancient deluge was not a metaphor? And what if it did not simply erase villages of hunters and gatherers, but whole cities, networks, and knowledge far beyond what we dare to imagine? Across continents, cultures that never touched tell the same tale. A golden age undone by a great cataclysm from the sky, followed by waters that swallowed everything. When the seas withdrew, a new world emerged, yet one haunted by echoes of what had been. Ruins dated wrongly, monuments misattributed, and myths dismissed as chance may be fragments of a forgotten age. A civilization not just older, but attuned to the hidden forces of Earth and cosmos. One that grasped resonance, geometry, and the deep language of the planet itself. What if the past we lost is the key to a future still to come? If you are drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the spaces between what we see and what was made to vanish, you may subscribe only if it feels right. And let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. I love to see our little constellation of listeners light across the world. The Earth is skilled at guarding secrets, wrapping them in layers of soil, stone, and sediment, showing them only to those who know how to look. But when those layers are lifted, what lies hidden? For centuries, we have turned to stories to explain our beginnings, myths and legends passed through generations. But what if those tales are not fables, but memories? What if they are faint echoes of a civilization drowned, one more advanced than the world we know today? We have all heard of the Great Flood, the sacred deluge that swept across the earth, leaving only a few. But the flood is not merely a story in holy texts. It appears in the myths of many peoples, each carrying their own vision of disaster. In Mesopotamia, Utnapishtim survives the waters, building a vessel to carry his kin and the seeds of life. In Hindu tradition, Manu is saved by a divine fish, while the Maya, the Greeks, the Norse, and the Chinese tell their own versions of the flood. The flood, it seems, is not a single tale. It is a memory carried by the world. But what did it erase? What if, beyond humanity's earliest civilizations, it swept away something far greater? Evidence found in ruins scattered across the globe suggests that a highly advanced society thrived long before the cultures we call the cradle of civilization. What if the flood did not merely take human lives, but washed away an entire way of life, a forgotten world of profound knowledge and lost technology? In the channeled scablins of Washington, strange formations speak of violence. The jagged terrain looks like the scar of a vast war, or perhaps something unearthly. Rivers that no longer flow, valleys cut deep into the land, and great ripples carved into stone hint at a force unimaginable. Scientists struggled to explain them until, in the 1920s, a man named J. Harlan Bretz suggested a radical idea. He proposed that the scablins were carved by a catastrophic flood, one so violent it reshaped the land in only days. Bretz was mocked by his peers. But decades later, with satellites and stronger evidence, his vision was finally accepted. This was no ordinary flood. It was a global reset, a sudden force that swept across the earth, erasing all that stood in its way. If the scablins were carved by such a deluge, then what of the rest of the planet? What other cities, monuments, and civilizations were buried beneath the waters? The flood, as remembered in the old myths, was not a local storm. It was planetary, a cataclysm that reshaped the surface of the world and swept away the remains of a forgotten age. If such a civilization existed, where are its traces? Could the evidence rest hidden beneath the earth, buried in structures that defy what we understand? Megalithic monuments across the world offer tantalizing clues. In Egypt, South America, and Southeast Asia, immense stoneworks lie partly buried in the ground, their builders unknown. Sites such as the Osirian in Egypt or the Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek hold blocks far larger than any tools of the cultures that followed. Many weigh hundreds of tons, cut with precision that modern engineers still marvel at. Could these monuments be the remains of a civilization before the flood? A culture that possessed knowledge beyond what we grasp today? And if so, what became of it? Was it destroyed in the flood, or did it vanish without a trace, leaving only echoes of what once was? In Bolivia, the ruins of Puma Punku offer yet another mystery. The precision of its interlocking stones carved with sharp angles reveals a people of great skill. Yet history books claim the builders were a pre-Incan culture with no tools capable of shaping such stone. How could a society without advanced instruments accomplish this? The mystery of these works points again to a forgotten civilization, one erased by the flood. But if such a culture truly lived, where are its other remains? Could the waters have concealed them, burying them beneath seas or within the deep earth? One of the most haunting legends is that of the lost land of Mu. 19th century archaeologist Augustus Le Plongeon wrote of Mu, a vast continent that existed long before Egypt, Mesopotamia, or the Indus Valley. He claimed Mu was home to a highly advanced society with knowledge far beyond its time. But what became of Mu? Was it swallowed by the flood, leaving no trace behind? James Church, a British writer, later expanded the tale, saying he had discovered tablets describing the life and culture of Mu. Skeptics doubted his claims, and without proof, the story of Mu faded away. Yet the Moai statues of Easter Island continue to raise questions. Towering figures, carved with precision that amazes even modern engineers, hint that the Rapa Nui inherited wisdom from an earlier world. But who were those ancestors, and how did they gain such knowledge? Could they have been survivors of a pre-flood civilization, passing fragments of wisdom to later generations? As we dig deeper into the mysteries of the past, one truth grows clear. The flood did not only destroy cities, it shattered entire paradigms of knowledge and understanding. The civilizations that endured the flood rebuilt, but only with fragments of the wisdom that had once existed. And what if the knowledge of that earlier world was not only about raising monuments or creating art? What if it held something deeper? Something that could reshape our entire understanding of life itself. As we search for the missing pieces of this forgotten age, we find more questions than answers. Yet the evidence waits, buried in silence, hidden beneath the earth. The flood may have taken much, but it did not take all. The secrets of the lost world remain, waiting for those bold enough to uncover them. The world we know rests upon the remains of countless civilizations. Each one rises, each one falls, leaving fragments behind. But what if some fragments do not belong to the peoples we study? What if they belong to a history that came before them all? As we step into new discoveries, we begin to glimpse the shadow of a forgotten world, a world nearly erased by the Great Flood. Across the earth, strange remnants linger, structures, artifacts, ruins that do not fit the story we tell. Consider Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a massive stone sanctuary dated to more than 11,000 years ago. That is 7,000 years before the pyramids of Egypt. Its precision-carved pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, reveal mastery thought impossible for such an ancient time. Surely hunters and gatherers could not have built it. Yet history insists that they did. The very idea of a society capable of such wonders unsettles the ground of what we believe. And Göbekli Tepe is not alone. Across the world, other sites whisper of the same forgotten skill. In Bolivia, the ruins of Puma Punku stand as another quiet witness. Massive blocks of stone, cut and interlocked with precision, lie scattered in silence. Some weigh more than 100 tons. Yet the culture credited with building them lacked the tools to shape such stone. So we must ask, if not them, then who? These ruins hint at something more than engineering. They suggest a deeper knowledge of the natural world, an understanding that has been lost. It feels as if their builders were not merely surviving, but thriving in harmony with forces we barely grasp today. How could such knowledge disappear completely? Could it be that the flood swept away not only cities and people, but entire systems of thought, leaving only ruins to whisper of their existence? In Egypt, another riddle waits. The Osirion, a subterranean temple older than the pyramids, lies beneath the ground. Its stones are immense, fitted with exactness beyond the skill of later dynasties. Its design is unlike any other structure in Egypt, pointing to an origin far older than we accept. Was it raised by hands from before the flood? And if so, how many others lie hidden still? Across the sea in Baalbek, Lebanon, stands the Temple of Jupiter. Its foundations rest upon trilithon stones, each one weighing more than 800 tons. History gives credit to the Romans, but even their knowledge could not have moved such giants. Could these be the remains of a world drowned in water, leaving behind only stones too heavy to erase? The flood, remembered in countless myths, was not local. It was planetary, a catastrophe that reshaped the surface of the earth. Its evidence remains in the ruins of civilizations long forgotten. The carved pillars of Göbekli Tepe, the vast stones of Puma Punku, the trilithons of Baalbek, all leave us with a single haunting question. What became of the knowledge of builders? Was it truly lost to water? Or does it remain, waiting for us to uncover? To find an answer, we must turn not only to the ruins, but to the stories passed through time. Across ancient cultures, tales speak of gods and giants, of beings who descended from the stars to give humanity wisdom. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, divine beings who came from the heavens to teach the secrets of civilization. Were they survivors of that drowned world? Or were they the ones who helped humanity begin again after the waters had passed? The Sumerians left behind a vast record of words, filled with astronomy, mathematics, and knowledge of building. But they were not the first to know the stars. Their wisdom was inherited, carried forward from an earlier time, already lost in the flood. Knowledge does not appear from nothing. It must be passed down from somewhere, from someone. In the temples of Egypt, we find carvings of strange devices, shaped like lamps, complete with filaments and sockets. These are called the Dendera lights, carved upon the walls of the Temple of Hathor. They seem to show that the ancients knew electricity long before we believed they could have. Where did such wisdom come from? Could it be a fragment of the drowned world, a glimpse of its light? Mysteries like these challenge not only our history, but the very story of human progress. If a civilization before the flood held such knowledge, what does it mean for us? Are we truly the first advanced people to walk this earth? Or are we only continuing a path carved by others long before us, erased in water? As we search deeper, we find more questions than answers. Yet one truth shines through. The flood was no parable. And the world it destroyed was no fable. It was real. And as we dig through stone and silence, we may uncover the wisdom of an age before. In forgotten ruins, the past whispers to us if we are willing to listen. Some believe that among the ruins hidden beneath the sea lies the most famous legend of all, Atlantis. First told by the Greek philosopher Plato, it describes a vast and powerful civilization rich in knowledge and mastery that vanished in a single night beneath the waves. For centuries, it has been dismissed as allegory, a tale to illustrate pride and downfall. But what if it was memory? What if Atlantis was real, and its story one more echo of the flood? Plato wrote that Atlantis was a society far advanced for its age, with technology and culture beyond the Greeks themselves. He said it thrived 9,000 years before his own time, and then in one sudden cataclysm, it sank into the sea. Could it be that the Bimini Road, the strange underwater formation in the Bahamas, is a fragment of this lost world? Its stone blocks, laid in a pattern like a road or wall, still puzzle researchers today. And Atlantis is not alone. Across the globe lie other cities swallowed by the sea. Off the coast of India rests the city of Dwarka, once thought only a tale from Hindu scripture. In the year 2000, marine archaeologists found its ruins deep beneath the waves. Stone walls, streets, and foundations were revealed, some dating back 9,000 years, older than any known civilization in India. Far to the east, off the coast of Japan, lies Yonaguni. Beneath the water, divers discovered massive terraces and steps, with sharp angles and flat walls that look carved by human hands. Some call it natural erosion, yet others see the clear lines of a forgotten city. Its resemblance to pyramids and platforms is undeniable. If Yonaguni was built, then it belonged to a people far older than history allows. Other sites, too, stir the same questions. Off Cuba, researchers mapped vast structures lying deep below the surface, resembling geometric patterns of streets and plazas. In the Gulf of Cambay in India, sonar revealed submerged ruins stretching for miles. Each of these places, whether Dwarka, Yonaguni, or the Bimini Road, points to the same haunting truth. Civilizations once stood where oceans now roll, and always the stories remain. Tales of cities lost beneath the waters, of gods who warned the people, of survivors who carried fragments of wisdom to the lands above. The flood was not a local storm, not one nation's tale, but a memory carried across the earth. It swept away not only lives and cities, but entire worlds of knowledge. Yet in the ruins beneath the seas and in the legends passed from age to age, the whispers remain, waiting to be heard. The great megaliths of the world stand as quiet reminders of something greater. The pyramids of Egypt, the stone circles of Stonehenge, the ancient temples of Southeast Asia, all are markers of a knowledge that seems to surpass the cultures credited with their making. They do not only display strength, but precision, alignment, and intention. They whisper of a civilization that once knew more than we allow ourselves to believe. How could a society so advanced vanish without leaving a trace of its origin? Was the flood truly a natural event, or was it something more deliberate, a catastrophe that swept the memory of an age from the earth? The pyramids of Giza, for example, are aligned with the stars so perfectly that even today, their precision stirs awe. Their immense stones are fitted with accuracy almost beyond our tools, and their scale continues to challenge imagination. Stonehenge, too, rests not as a pile of stones, but as a calendar of the heavens. Its circle marks the solstices with clarity, capturing light in ways that reveal more than survival. They reveal a profound understanding of time. The ancient temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia align not only with the sun, but with celestial events written in the skies. The builders saw the earth and heavens as one, and their works reflected that truth. These are not accidents. They are messages in stone. The ancients seem to say, "We knew the stars, we understood the earth, we left you these signs." The question that lingers is simple, yet heavy. Did they learn this by watching the skies for centuries? Or did they inherit such wisdom from an older world, one that had already mapped the heavens before the flood? If they did, then the monuments left behind are not merely sacred places. They are memories carved in stone, echoes of a deeper knowledge meant to outlast the waves. They ask us to look beyond what we are told, to listen to what still hums beneath the earth and above in the stars. For these alignments, Egypt, Stonehenge, Angkor, are threads of the same fabric, reminders of a cosmic order that guided those who came before. Perhaps the ancients did not draw their power as we do today. Not from fire, not from fuel, not from machines. Instead, they may have touched the hidden energies of the earth itself. They may have known how to use sound, vibration, and resonance to shape stone, to lift massive blocks, and to weave harmony into their creations. Their temples were not only places of worship, but instruments tuned to the song of the world. If so, then the flood was not the end, but one turn of a far greater cycle, a rhythm of creation, destruction, and renewal that echoes across ages. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, and with each fall, something is lost. But not everything. Traces always remain, fragments of stone, fragments of story, fragments of memory that wait to be found again. Many traditions tell of such cycles. In India, the yugas describe great spans of time where humanity moves from light into darkness, then rises again. The Greeks spoke of their ages of gold, silver, bronze, and iron. Each cycle ends with upheaval, only for life to begin once more. The flood, then, was one such ending, a reset written across the earth. Yet the wisdom of the ancients was not entirely destroyed. It lingers in myths, in legends, in symbols that travel through time. It remains in the stones that refuse to fall, in the alignments that still mark the stars. Each fragment is a reminder that knowledge once flowed deeper than we know. The question that rests with us now is simple. Will we listen, or will we let the cycle repeat once more, forgetting until the earth chooses again to cleanse and renew? For if the ancients could harness the living energy of the planet, then perhaps their message is not only a memory of what was, but a guide to what could yet return. Beneath the surface of our modern world, there is a faint hum, a vibration carrying the echoes of a time long gone, still lingering in stones, in earth, and in myth. Civilizations now vanished, known only through stories they left behind, have slipped away from history's record. But what if they did not disappear by time alone? What if memory itself was erased by something far more catastrophic? For centuries, we were taught that Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley marked the first steps of human progress. Yet when we look closer, the ancient world shows gaps, spaces that suggest something older, something more advanced, lived before them. Take Dwarka, for example. Long dismissed as a legend from Hindu scripture. Yet in 2000, divers uncovered ruins of a sunken city exactly where the old tale said it would be, beneath the Arabian Sea. There they found walls, streets, and foundations that could only be man-made. Radiocarbon tests suggested an age of 9,000 years, far older than any civilization in India. Could this be the trace of a forgotten people? If so, what fate swept them away? Dwarka is not alone. In the Gulf of Cambay, sonar revealed vast patterns deep under the water, streets, foundations, and grid-like designs, also dating 9,000 years. No record names their builders. These cities, silent beneath the sea, are not accidents. They are evidence of something much older, a civilization that existed before the flood. But what destroyed them? Were they drowned by rising seas at the end of the Ice Age? Or were they swept away by something sudden, something violent, a global flood? And if it was more than natural, could it have been deliberate, an event written by forces beyond comprehension? Ancient myths often tell of gods or beings from the stars who shaped or guided humankind. In Sumerian stories, the Anunnaki descend from the heavens to share knowledge. Could these figures have been survivors of the lost world, returning to pass on fragments of wisdom after the flood? The evidence lingers not only in stories, but in the artifacts left behind. Some are too advanced to appear from nothing. Consider the Antikythera mechanism found in a Greek shipwreck. A device from 100 BCE, it was a complex analog computer designed to track eclipses and the movements of planets. Such precision was thought impossible for its time. How did they create it without older guidance? Egypt, too, leaves riddles. The Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned almost perfectly to the cardinal points, built with accuracy modern tools still struggle to achieve. Constructed 4,000 years ago, yet so precise it defies the age. Could this skill have been passed down from a world that came before the flood? The deeper we look, the clearer it becomes. These wonders were not the work of primitive people. They were the creations of a society with knowledge we have since lost. But where did it come from? Was it inherited from a vanished age, swept away in water? Evidence hides everywhere, in ruins we cannot explain, in myths we dismiss, in artifacts that whisper of genius. The flood may have erased a civilization, yet it did not erase all traces. Scattered across the earth, their remnants remain, waiting to be uncovered. And each discovery forces a harder question. If there was a world before ours, more advanced than we imagine, what became of it? Some suggest survivors endured, carrying only fragments, rebuilding slowly after the waters receded. Their knowledge thinned, but enough remained to spark the myths. Perhaps these survivors became remembered as gods and heroes, teachers who brought farming, writing, and the first steps of culture. Their real history buried under layers of time, their memory transformed into legend. If so, the wisdom they once held may not be gone, only hidden, perhaps waiting for us to rediscover. The flood took much, but not all. The secrets of that lost world still rest beneath oceans and soil, waiting for the eyes willing to see. Each layer of earth, each submerged ruin holds whispers of a time long forgotten. We may not yet understand how deep the destruction ran, but the clues are there, hidden in plain sight. They wait for those who know how to look. And so we ask, what if everything we know of civilization's rise is wrong? What if humanity's true story lies buried in a world older, wiser, and more advanced than we imagine? Consider Yonaguni off the coast of Japan. Beneath the sea, divers found terraces, platforms, and vast stone shapes. Some resemble pyramids, others sharp-angled walls, too precise to be chance. Mainstream voices call it erosion. But explorers who walk its steps see craftsmanship, patterns, and design. They believe Yonaguni is the remnant of a city long forgotten, drowned before the civilizations we study today. If Yonaguni was built by hands from a civilization that lived before the flood, then what other secrets still rest beneath the oceans? What other fragments of human history lie hidden below the waves, waiting to be seen again? And if these immense shapes were truly carved and raised by people long ago, what do they tell us of their makers? Did they possess skills and knowledge we can no longer imagine? Or did they simply vanish, leaving only silence, their legacy drowned by catastrophe? Yonaguni is but one voice among many. Scattered across the seas are ruins that hint at something greater, a global story, a civilization erased by time, yet remembered in stone. Off the Bahamas lies the Bimini Road, a pathway of great blocks aligned with uncanny precision. Perfectly placed stones stretch like a straight line across the seafloor. To some, it is only nature. To others, it is proof, a sunken city, perhaps even Atlantis itself. Plato, the philosopher, told of Atlantis 9,000 years before his age. A mighty civilization, rich in wisdom, power, and technology far beyond the Greeks. But in a single night, it was lost, swallowed by the sea. The Bimini Road, along with ruins scattered across oceans, may be its bones, its last remains. If so, then Atlantis was not a parable. It was memory. But what happened? Was Atlantis destroyed by the Great Flood remembered in myths across the world? Or did it fall to some other disaster, its name carried only in stories whispered through time? The idea of Atlantis, or of a lost civilization before the flood, is not just myth. It is a question, one gaining weight as more discoveries rise from the depths. As technology grows, sonar scans, submersibles, and satellites peer into the seafloor, uncovering ruins in the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and the Indian Ocean. Each new city found beneath the water adds another voice, another reminder that human history is far older than we were taught. But with discovery comes mystery. If these cities stood, why did none survive? What event swept across the earth so completely that nothing was left whole? Some researchers speak of the Younger Dryas' impact. A comet striking Earth around 12,800 years ago. Fire in the skies, ice melting, seas rising, storms raging, the Earth itself torn apart. Such an event would have drowned the coasts, buried cities, erased the memory of a civilization in a single turning of the sky. And what then? The survivors, if any remained, would have begun again with only fragments of their former world. Knowledge carried in whispers, fading with each generation, leaving only myths. And so we hear the stories. Noah, Menu, Deucalion, Utnapishtim, the chosen few who survived the waters, carrying seeds of life, carrying stories of a world gone dark. These tales are not only myth, they are memories. Dim echoes of an age when humanity thrived with knowledge of earth and stars, only to be undone by a flood that ended their time. The flood was not merely cleansing, it was the closing of an age. It washed away a people who had touched the height of their power, leaving behind ruins, stories, and questions that stir us still. The pyramids of Egypt, the stones of Stonehenge, the temples of Cambodia, the roads beneath the waves, all of them may be fragments of that age. They remind us that something once lived here, something greater, now forgotten. And so we ask, how could such brilliance be erased so fully? Was it a natural catastrophe, or was it something more? Was it punishment, or accident, or design? And where did their knowledge go? Did it die with them, or was it carried hidden, waiting for rediscovery? Perhaps we are not the first advanced civilization at all. Perhaps we are only rebuilding, step by step, on the remnants of a forgotten world. The search for this civilization continues. With every discovery, every submerged stone, every ruin uncovered, we move closer to understanding. One day the sea may surrender its secrets, and when it does, our story will change. The secrets of the flood lie in waiting, secrets that could reshape everything we know about who we are and how long we have walked this earth. And then come the oldest whispers of all, the stories of giants, tales told across the world of beings of great size and great power who ruled in the age before men. The Greeks spoke of the Titans, primal beings of immense strength and wisdom, cast down by the Olympians. The Norse told of the Jutnar, giants who walked the land before the gods claimed the skies. In the Bible, there are the Nephilim, children of heaven and earth whose strength was said to rival mountains erased by the flood. But what if these were not mere myths? What if the giants were real, survivors of that lost civilization, remnants of a race whose fall marked the end of an age? Could they have been the builders of the megaliths, the architects of the stones we still cannot explain? Perhaps the flood was not only a storm of water, but the wiping away of a people unlike any we know today. The stories of giants are not confined to Europe or the Middle East. Across the Americas, ancient tribes tell of the old ones, giants who lived before humanity, who raised great structures and walked the land before vanishing. In the Andes, the Inca spoke of beings of great stature who built mighty fortresses of stone, such as the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, with walls so vast and precise they defy our tools even now. These stories come from every corner of the world, and they carry a strange consistency. Myths of titans, of Nephilim, of Jotnar, of ancient ones who shaped the land. Could they have been more than myth? Could they have been the last survivors of a great civilization erased by the flood, leaving behind only the faintest memory of their presence? Perhaps these giants were not gods at all, but men of knowledge and power whose age came to an end when the waters rose. And if so, then we walk upon the ruins of their world, building anew in their shadow, carrying only fragments of their forgotten light. The precision of these stones, cut and placed without mortar, has long unsettled archaeologists. Massive blocks, some weighing hundreds of tons, sit locked together with joints so tight that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. How were such stones moved, lifted, and set into place with accuracy still beyond us? How could so-called primitive civilizations perform feats that challenge even our most advanced machines? The question lingers like an echo across the ages. And so, the stories of giants emerge. In Egypt, myths speak of beings larger and stronger than men, who walked the earth before the dynasties rose. Some believe it was they who raised the great monuments, their size and skill explaining what seems impossible for ordinary hands. The pyramids of Giza, the most iconic of all megalithic wonders, remain the most mysterious. Their sheer scale, their flawless geometry, their precise alignment to the stars, all suggest knowledge far beyond what the Egyptians of their age should have possessed. Could these monuments have been the legacy of a race that lived before the flood? Giants, or perhaps an advanced people whose wisdom and power were swept away by catastrophe, leaving only their stone monuments to defy time. Far from Egypt, in Southeast Asia, Angkor Wat rises from the forests of Cambodia, a temple complex of staggering size and elegance, covered in carvings that map not only gods and myths, but entire cosmologies. Its builders, the Khmer Empire, are said to have held knowledge handed down by the gods. But where did that knowledge come from? And why did it fade, leaving only these stone records of a brilliance now vanished? The fall of these giants, whether beings of myth or symbols of forgotten knowledge, marked the end of an era. An age when humanity, or perhaps something greater than humanity, accomplished wonders now beyond our grasp. Their ruins are fragments, traces left scattered like breadcrumbs through time. But what if the wisdom they carried has not vanished entirely? What if it lies hidden, waiting to be remembered? Think of the Antikythera mechanism, an intricate clockwork computer discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece, a device capable of predicting eclipses and tracking the heavens with astonishing precision. Such sophistication should not have existed in its time, yet it did. And if such technology was possible then, what greater devices might have existed long before the flood? The flood was not only a cleansing of the earth, but the destruction of an entire age of knowledge. Whatever civilization existed before, whatever giants walked the earth, their wisdom was broken and scattered. Survivors carried only fragments, enough to seed myths and legends, but not enough to preserve the fullness of what had been. Yet their traces remain, scattered across the globe in ruins, in megaliths, in artifacts that still whisper of forgotten mastery. The flood erased much, but not all. Giants may be gone, but their shadows linger, etched into stone, calling us to remember. From the pyramids of Egypt to the trilithon stones of Baalbek, from the circles of Stonehenge to the heights of Machu Picchu, every ruin seems to speak the same quiet defiance. We are not the work of primitives. We are the remnants of something greater. As we step closer to these monuments, we realize they are not merely memorials of the past, but keys to a world we have lost. They are not simply stones stacked in silence, but clues. Clues to a time when knowledge was deeper, when humanity, or perhaps beings beyond humanity, understood the forces of earth, sky, and cosmos in ways we have forgotten. And so the question hangs heavy. Why were these structures built? What secrets still sleep within them? What truths might they hold about the cycles of ages, the shaping of worlds, and the knowledge that once illuminated the earth before the flood? Perhaps they are not only ruins, perhaps they are messages, fragments of a truth too vast to vanish, waiting patiently for us to awaken, to listen, and to remember. In the ancient world, the boundaries between science, religion, and magic were not sharp lines but flowing rivers, blending into one another. To build was not simply to shape stone, it was to shape reality. The raising of monumental structures such as the Great Pyramid was more than engineering. It was an act of devotion, a cosmic gesture, a deliberate weaving of earth and sky. These were not mere tombs or monuments. They were manifestations of a deeper knowledge, born from a vision of how nature, the cosmos, and the hidden energies of the earth are all bound together. Some believe the builders were not only architects, but initiates of a universal science, guardians of secrets that allowed them to harness the very forces that flow unseen through creation. They may have understood resonance, vibration, and energy not as theories, but as living truths woven into their craft. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza. For centuries, it has baffled scholars and travelers alike. Its sheer scale stirs awe. Over 2 million stone blocks, each placed with such care that the entire structure remains standing after thousands of years. Yet it is not only the size that astonishes, its placement is even more remarkable. The Great Pyramid is aligned with true north to within a fraction of a degree, a feat so precise that it humbles even our modern instruments. But the alignment does not stop there. It reaches beyond Earth toward the heavens. The shafts of the pyramid align with stars in Orion's belt, long associated with Osiris, lord of the afterlife. This suggests the pyramid was more than a resting place. It was a bridge, a symbolic gateway meant to guide the soul from the earth to the eternal stars. It was as much a cosmic tool as it was a monument. What if the pyramid was not simply a structure of stone, but an instrument of energy? What if its angles and passages were designed to resonate with the earth itself, to amplify forces flowing unseen through the land? Some researchers, like John Anthony West, propose that it was a resonator, a vast, humming chamber designed to channel and magnify energy, using geometry as the key. If true, this would explain why such painstaking precision was demanded. It was not just about leaving a monument to kings. It was about unlocking a deeper law of the universe. This idea that the ancients knew energy as both science and spirit is echoed at sites across the world. In Bolivia, the megaliths of Puma Punku stand as quiet proof. Massive stones, some weighing over 130 tons, lie carved with edges so sharp and angles so exact they seem machine-made. Yet they were built in an age long before machines. How could this be? Some say the builders used techniques now forgotten, methods that relied not on brute force but on vibration, resonance, and sound itself to cut and move stone as if it were weightless. Far across the earth, in the jungles of Cambodia, another wonder rises, Angkor Wat. A temple complex vast and intricate, its carvings map the stories of gods and the cycles of the cosmos. But even more striking is its alignment. Angkor Wat is set precisely to mirror the movements of the sun and stars. At certain times of year, the rising sun crowns its towers in light, as if the temple itself were a calendar written in stone. The nearby complex of Preah Vihear sits atop a mountain, aligned to celestial events, a silent witness to the sky. These alignments are not accidents. They reveal that the ancients were sky watchers and earth listeners, blending architecture with astronomy, geometry with spirit. They built not just for beauty or worship, but to connect, to place themselves within the rhythm of the cosmos. Their temples were not simply homes for gods. They were harmonies of stone and star, reminders that humanity once saw itself as part of a living, breathing universe. And so the question whispers, did they know something we have forgotten? Did they tap into forces we can barely imagine? Each ruin, each alignment, each echo in stone suggests that the ancients understood the world in ways far deeper than our textbooks allow. Perhaps their knowledge was not lost. Perhaps it still waits, hidden in the geometry of the earth, waiting for us to remember how to listen. The precision of these ancient structures, their careful placement, and their alignment with the heavens speaks to something far greater than chance. It whispers of a deeper knowledge of nature's hidden forces, a wisdom perhaps carried from an earlier, forgotten civilization. High in the Andes, cradled by mist and mountain, rests Machu Picchu. The city, perched upon a ridge between peaks, holds secrets still only partly understood. Its stonework is unlike anything seen in later Incan construction. Massive blocks, cut with uncanny precision, fit together as though grown from the same rock. Seamless joints lock stone to stone so tightly that no mortar was ever needed, and centuries of storms have failed to pull them apart. The placement of Machu Picchu itself reveals yet another mystery. Scholars now believe that the city's layout echoes the stars, that its sacred structures were aligned not merely for shelter but to harmonize with the cycles of heaven. It was as if its builders sought not only to live upon the earth, but to join the earth with the cosmos, creating a dwelling that pulsed with both earthly and celestial energy. Could Machu Picchu be more than an Incan creation? Could it be the remnant of an older, more advanced civilization, one that had long understood the deep patterns of resonance, vibration, and alignment with the sky? The evidence gathers quietly, stone by stone, suggesting that the ancients knew far more about the living world than we have allowed ourselves to believe. And yet, that knowledge was not preserved. It was buried beneath time, shattered by catastrophe. The flood, spoken of in so many myths, may have been the great hand that wiped the slate clean. It drowned not only cities, but memory itself. Yet pieces survived, in stone, in myth, in ritual. Legends of gods, of giants, of divine wisdom may not be fanciful tales. They may be echoes of a civilization far older, carrying knowledge we have not yet rediscovered. But when the waters rose, they did more than wash away. They rewrote. Survivors rebuilt their world from fragments, piecing together what they could remember, telling stories so that something, anything, might remain. What was once science became myth. What was once knowledge became legend. And what was once power became only a shadow of memory. Thousands of years later, we are left with the puzzle. Stones cut too precisely, temples aligned too perfectly, myths too consistent to dismiss. We find ourselves asking, what was lost? And what might we learn if we could recover even a fragment of that vanished wisdom? Perhaps the answers lie in the ruins we pass, in the whispers of ancient temples, waiting for those willing to listen. There is something haunting in how many cultures speak of the flood. They do not describe it as mere disaster. They speak of it as a reset. Not just the drowning of lands or the collapse of towers, but the deliberate wiping away of memory, a cosmic button pressed to begin again. And when myth after myth begins at the same moment, when the waters recede and the world starts anew, it no longer feels like coincidence. It feels like a scar carved across humanity's shared memory, a deliberate break in time. The flood was not only drowning, it was forgetting. Before the waters, the myths say there were wonders. Gods walked beside mortals. Cities glowed with lights not born of fire. Technologies bent nature itself. But after the waters, silence. A blank page. In place of scrolls and libraries, only stories told in whispers, carved into stone, passed from trembling lips. If you wish to erase an age so completely that it left no trace, what would you choose? Fire leaves ash, war leaves ruins. But water buries. It scatters, it smooths and silences. Water swallows, making the impossible vanish as though it never existed at all. So when the myths tell us of 40 days and 40 nights, or seas rising to drown entire continents, perhaps we should not take the numbers too literally. Perhaps they are the language of memory itself, telling us not of the measure, but of the meaning, that there was once a flood vast enough to erase nearly everything, and with it, the story of a world we can no longer clearly remember. Perhaps those numbers, 40 days, 40 nights, were never meant to measure time at all. Perhaps they signify totality, the point where memory crosses into oblivion, where the world that was becomes unreachable. And yet, not all was lost. Even in the silence of forgetting, there are cracks in the darkness. Through those cracks, faint voices echo. They speak from ruins, from artifacts that seem misplaced, from fragments that resist the neat story we have been told. Technologies appear where they should not. No. Knowledge blooms in places with no clear path of transmission. The Sumerians, for example, described the distant planets Uranus and Neptune, worlds invisible to the naked eye, worlds our most powerful telescopes only confirmed in recent centuries. In their cuneiform records, such details appear not as metaphors, but with precision, set among lunar cycles and star charts as if they were facts, not dreams. Were they guessing? Were they blessed with impossible insight? Or were they remembering something the flood had nearly erased? Egypt offers its own whisper of this mystery. In the Dendera temple complex, deep underground, reliefs show what many call the Dendera light, a shape uncannily resembling a modern bulb, complete with a filament-like serpent and an extension like a power cord, carried by priests as if it were both sacred and practical. And yet, the chambers where these carvings lie bear no soot, though torches should have blackened their ceilings. If not flame, what illuminated their halls? What if what we call electricity was known, then forgotten, mistaken by us as myth and coincidence? And then there is language itself. Writing appears in history not as a gradual evolution, but as sudden brilliance. Sumerian cuneiform, Egyptian hieroglyphs, the Indus script, each one emerges fully formed, complex, and complete, as if inherited rather than invented. There are no records of their trial and error, no stumbling first alphabets. They simply begin as though the survivors of the flood were not creating new tongues, but reviving old ones, piecing back together what they remembered of a forgotten world. Perhaps post-flood civilizations were not inventing from nothing, but scavenging the ruins of the age that came before. Perhaps their temples and palaces were built on foundations not entirely their own, stones repurposed from structures older than memory. At Baalbek, in Lebanon, the Roman Temple of Jupiter was raised atop a platform of unimaginable size. 3 stones, the trilithon, each weighing over 800 tons, rest beneath the temple like the bones of a giant. The Romans, skilled though they were, could not have placed them. They built upon them. The truth lies deeper in the megaliths beneath, in the silence no one explains. And so the idea of a flood as a reset grows larger. It is not only about water and destruction. It touches the very rhythm of human progress. Perhaps we do not rise in a steady line from caves to cities to machines. Perhaps civilization moves in cycles, rising, falling, erasing, and then rising again upon the ruins of the old. Each cycle brings brilliance. Each cycle leaves scars. If the flood was such a reset, then we must ask, what caused it? Was it nature? A shifting Earth, an ice age ending, oceans surging? Was it cosmic interference, an asteroid, a comet, a force from beyond, or was it something else? One theory lingers, unsettling in its suggestion that the flood was intentional, not chance, not fate, but design. Across cultures, the myths speak of judgment. The gods, displeased, declared the world corrupt. They chose one family, one man, one guide, Noah, Utnapishtim, Manu, and through them life continued. The rest were swept away. But who truly were those judged? Were they simply wicked, or were they powerful in ways we do not yet understand? Were they tower builders, star watchers, keepers of knowledge too vast to be safe? Perhaps it was not evil that doomed them, but hubris. Perhaps they reached too far, touched forces they could not control, and in their daring, became a threat to themselves, or to something greater. And so, the flood came. Not as punishment, but as erasure. Not as wrath, but as reset. A clean slate for a story meant to begin again. In this telling, the flood was not punishment, it was containment. A way of drawing the curtain closed on a story that had gone too far. Perhaps this is why modern archaeology resists such ideas. To accept them would mean abandoning the comfort of a linear history, a neat ladder climbing upward rung by rung from primitive beginnings to modern triumphs. But cycles do not comfort. Cycles disturb. They whisper that we are not the first, and worse still, that we may not be the last. What unsettles most is not the possibility of a forgotten golden age, but the suspicion that we are nearing another turning, that this wheel which has risen and fallen before is about to shift once more. Look around. The signs are there if we care to see them. Ice melting at the poles, seas rising, storms growing stronger, fault lines tremble, volcanoes stir, and deep within the crust, pressures mount. The earth is restless, as though remembering. And if the ancients left us anything in their myths, perhaps it was not only their memories, but their warnings. If that is true, then we are not simply archaeologists of the past. We are participants in the echo. A new chapter etched atop the bones of the old, repeating a story we no longer fully recall. The question becomes not if the flood will return, but when. How long before myth becomes memory once again? To step into these mysteries is to do more than examine ruins. It is to confront the unspoken implication that our own age is fragile, that our progress is not permanent, and that we may one day join the ruins we study. To admit that an advanced civilization predated our own is to admit that progress is not inevitable. It is fragile, breakable, resettable. And yet, what if those lost civilizations left us more than ruins? What if they left behind a blueprint, fragments of knowledge scattered like puzzle pieces waiting to be reassembled? Hidden not only in stone, but in myth, in story, in ritual. Myths, legends, ancient texts, they may not be fables. They may be recollections of what was, echoes carried through time despite deliberate erasure. Take Atlantis, a name that has haunted imagination for centuries. Plato tells us of an island empire, mighty and resplendent, more than 9,000 years before his time. Its ships sailed the seas, its knowledge bent nature, its cities glowed with energy beyond our comprehension. But as their power grew, so too did their arrogance. Corruption spread, hubris festered, and then, in a single day and night of catastrophe, Atlantis was swallowed by the sea. For ages, scholars dismissed the tale as allegory, a moral warning about pride and decay. But what if Plato was not inventing, but remembering? What if his words carried the dim memory of a civilization erased by flood? Evidence suggests he may not have been alone. Beneath the waves, archaeologists and explorers have found ruins that match fragments of his description. In the Bahamas, the Bimini Road lies, a series of great stone blocks aligned as though once part of streets or walls. Some say they are natural formations. Others look upon their symmetry and whisper, Atlantis. In the Mediterranean, too, structures lie submerged, their columns rising from the seafloor like drowned sentinels. In the Caribbean, divers discover walls and pavements far older than any known city. In the Gulf of Cambay, off the coast of India, sonar has revealed vast underwater patterns, grids of streets, foundations, artifacts, dating back 9,000 years or more, older than the Indus Valley civilization itself. Could these be the remnants of that world Plato described? Or fragments of many such worlds, civilizations swallowed in the same great tide? The more we uncover, the more the line between legend and memory blurs. Atlantis may not have been a singular city, but a symbol, a name given to all the worlds lost in that flood. Civilizations advanced beyond what we dare imagine, washed away in a single turning of the cycle. And here we stand, thousands of years later, staring into the same abyss. We have machines that fly, devices that speak across the world, towers that glitter with light. But what if these too are fragile? What if we too are only another Atlantis waiting for the waters to rise? Perhaps the ancients tried to warn us. Perhaps their myths, their stones, their stories were their way of whispering across time. This has happened before. And if we do not listen, it will happen again. The flood was not merely an ending, it was a reset. And we, whether we choose to believe it or not, are living closer to the next reset than we dare to admit. In the waters off India, archaeologists have uncovered traces of something astonishing. Ancient stone formations arranged in patterns far older than any known civilization in the region. Streets, walls, even grid-like foundations stretch across the seabed, as though a city once stood proudly before the sea claimed it. These ruins, silent beneath the waves, suggest that history may be far deeper than we've dared to imagine. But the search for lost cities is not only about recovering stone and mortar. It is about recovering a paradigm, a way of seeing and understanding the world that differs from our own. Perhaps these civilizations did not simply build great monuments. Perhaps they unlocked secrets of energy, resonance, and consciousness, domains where our science has only just begun to take its first steps. The ancient Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, beings they called gods who descended from the heavens to teach humanity. But what if these figures were not divine in the way we think of gods? What if they were the last inheritors of an advanced civilization, passing fragments of their wisdom to a world struggling to rebuild after the flood? The Sumerians knew of distant planets like Uranus and Neptune, bodies invisible without telescopes, yet mapped with startling accuracy thousands of years before modern astronomy confirmed them. Was this knowledge guessed or remembered? Egypt tells a similar story. The Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned with true north within a fraction of a degree, mirrors the stars of Orion with uncanny precision. To call it a tomb diminishes its mystery. What if it was something more? A gateway, a resonator, a structure built not just with stone, but with an intimate knowledge of the Earth's energies and the rhythms of the cosmos. Did the Egyptians inherit this wisdom from an even older world, one erased by flood but remembered in their temples of light and shadow? Across the ocean in South America, another enigma rises from the high plains of Bolivia, Puma Punku. Scattered blocks of stone, some weighing over 100 tons, lie carved with angles so sharp and interlocking joints so exact that modern engineers marvel at their precision. The culture credited with building it, a pre-Incan people, had no written language, no known tools capable of shaping stone on such a scale. And yet the evidence lies before us. Could Puma Punku be a survivor of the flood? A remnant of a civilization whose engineering knowledge surpassed even ours, its secrets buried in myth and memory? When we walk among these ruins, we are not merely tourists of the past. We are standing in the shadows of a lost understanding. These monuments are not just architecture, they are symbols, silent reminders of a wisdom that once flourished, a wisdom that knew the earth, the heavens, and the hidden forces that bind them together. The flood may have swept away cities and silenced voices, but it did not erase everything. The echoes remain in myths whispered around fires, in temples aligned with the stars, in blocks of stone too heavy to move yet too precise to dismiss. These clues are scattered like breadcrumbs across continents, waiting for us to notice, waiting for us to ask the forbidden question. What if we are not the first? What if the knowledge we celebrate as our own is only a fragment, a shard passed down through broken memory from a world that came before? What if we too are standing on the shoulders of giants, civilizations whose very names have been forgotten, yet whose wisdom still flows faintly through the veins of our culture? And most haunting of all, what if we are approaching the same threshold they once faced? Myths tell us that the flood was not only destruction, but also renewal, a reset. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, and each time the survivors begin again, carrying only fragments of what was lost. If this cycle is true, then the question is not whether there will be another turning, but when. The flood may have been catastrophe, but it was also catalyst. It forced memory into myth and left warnings hidden in stone. Civilizations rise and fall, but knowledge, though shattered, has a way of returning. Perhaps the lost paradigm is not gone forever. Perhaps it waits for us, buried beneath oceans, hidden in myths, etched into forgotten ruins, urging us to rediscover it. And if we do, it may not only change our past, it may unlock our future. As the flood myths and the ruins left scattered across the world begin to overlap, an unsettling realization emerges. The civilization that came before us may not have been remarkable only for its stonework or its grasp of the stars. Perhaps its true secret was something deeper, its ability to harness the living energy of the earth itself. What if the ancients did not merely build cities and temples for shelter or worship, but designed them as instruments? Instruments tuned to the hum of the planet, to forces that modern science is only beginning to perceive. Forces of resonance, vibration, and energy that flow invisibly beneath our feet. Their power may not have come from fire or metal, but from an intimacy with the Earth's pulse. The evidence lingers in stone. The Great Pyramid of Giza, rising from the desert with uncanny precision, is not simply aligned, it is perfectly aligned, true north, within fractions of a degree. The stars of Orion mirrored above. Its stones are not random blocks, but carefully chosen, fitted as though each carried a specific resonance, a purpose beyond mere walls. Was it a tomb, or was it something far greater? A cosmic machine, a resonator, a monument that channeled the Earth's hidden forces and bridged them with the heavens. Some researchers, like Christopher Dunn, have proposed that the pyramid may have functioned not as a resting place for kings, but as a generator, a device designed to draw upon the electromagnetic heartbeat of the Earth itself, converting it into usable energy. Its chambers and shafts, according to this theory, are not passages for the dead, but conduits for power, designed with a precision no primitive tools could explain. If true, then its construction was not only an act of engineering genius, it was a feat of energetic mastery. And if the pyramid was not unique, what of the others? Could Stonehenge, with its great standing stones aligned to the solstices, have been more than a calendar? Could it have been an amplifier of energy, drawing upon ley lines that still whisper across the English plains? Could Puma Punku, with its massive blocks cut with surgical accuracy, have been more than a temple, but part of a network designed to capture and channel the Earth's vibrational force? The ancients may have known of a web that binds the world together. Mysterious currents of power, lines of energy crossing mountains and seas, linking sacred sites and natural wonders. Today we call them ley lines, and they remain a curiosity, a fringe theory. But for the ancients, they may have been lifeblood. Egypt, the Maya, the Chinese, all spoke of such currents, weaving them into their temples, their cities, their myths. Imagine a world where cities were not built randomly, but precisely placed, aligned with stars above and energy below. Imagine structures that glowed not with fire, but with resonance, stone instruments tuned to the music of the earth. If this knowledge existed, then the flood did not only wash away lives and monuments, it drowned an entire science, a worldview where humanity lived not apart from the Earth's energy, but within its flow. And yet, whispers remain, in the ruins aligned to solstices, in myths of fireless light, in symbols carved into walls that resemble the forces we only now measure. Perhaps the ancients were not inventing superstition, but safeguarding memory. Perhaps they were leaving us a map, a reminder that the Earth is alive and that its energy waits, still flowing for those who remember how to listen. These ley lines, as they are called, were believed to carry powerful invisible currents, rivers of energy weaving silently through the earth. Many ancient temples and monuments appear to rest upon these lines as if placed not by chance, but with purpose, to drink from the flow, to harmonize with it, to use it. In China, the practice of feng shui carried forward this wisdom, a tradition that guided the placement of homes, palaces, and tombs to align with the earth's breath, ensuring balance, health, and prosperity. But what if the ancients went even further? What if these lines were not only spiritual veins, but practical ones? What if they powered cities, carried voices across great distances, or even bent the environment itself? Imagine the world as a vast organism, alive, pulsing, and the ancients as its caretakers, learning to touch its nerves, to channel its breath, to draw from its hidden strength for healing, illumination, and creation. One of the most compelling whispers of this idea is that the civilization before the flood may have possessed a kind of technology we can barely conceive of, one not based on combustion, engines, or wires, but upon the natural energies of the earth itself. A science of vibration, of resonance, of harmony, with forces too subtle for our instruments, yet powerful enough to move mountains. Some researchers believe the Egyptians themselves may have harnessed this knowledge. They speak of sound, of tones so pure, frequencies so exact that they could lift stone. By vibrating the massive blocks at just the right pitch, perhaps their weight was lessened, their solidity softened, their bulk moved as though by invisible hands. To us, this sounds like fantasy. Yet modern laboratories have shown the strange truth of resonance. A glass shatters when touched by a singer's note. An object trembles and dances when sound waves pass through it. Could the ancients have carried this further, using the symphony of the earth itself to build the impossible? If so, then their vision of technology was nothing like ours. Not hammers and cranes, not engines and oil, but music and energy. Stones tuned like instruments, cities built as symphonies of resonance. Theirs was a science married to nature, not opposed to it, a way of living within the rhythms of the cosmos rather than apart from them. And yet, what became of this knowledge? Did the flood wash it away in one sweep of water and time? Or was it hidden, deliberately buried by those who survived, locked away for an age when the world might be ready once again? The fragments we find, mysterious carvings, cryptic texts, temples aligned to forgotten stars, suggest not everything was lost. Threads remain, passed through secret teachings, woven into myths encoded in stone, enough to tease us, but not enough to restore the whole. Perhaps the survivors of the great cataclysm chose to conceal what they knew, fearing its misuse. Perhaps the ruins we uncover are not only monuments but vaults, deliberately built to whisper the truth across ages without shouting it. What if the flood was not only a destruction, but a veil drawn across a deeper reality? A pause in the story of humanity designed to hide what should not yet be known. And yet, here we are, digging, dreaming, listening. As we trace the veins of the earth and gaze again at the sky, one theme grows stronger. Those who came before were not only masters of stone and earth, but also of the heavens. The flood may have taken their cities, their temples, and their instruments of power, but it could not erase their intimacy with the stars. Their knowledge of the cosmos may have rivaled or even surpassed our own. What if their greatest gift was not the shaping of stone, but the mapping of the sky? What if they knew truths of the universe that we, in all our modern progress, are only now beginning to glimpse? The clues scattered across the world's ancient ruins whisper of a civilization whose gaze turned skyward, not merely to observe, but to interact, to weave its destiny into the movements of the stars. From the desert sands of Egypt to the mountains of South America, from the stone circles of Britain to the jungles of Cambodia, the alignments are too precise, too deliberate to be coincidence. These sites are not just structures, they are instruments tuned to the heavens. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its four sides face the cardinal directions with astonishing accuracy, so perfect that even modern instruments struggle to measure the deviation. It is as if the builders held the earth itself in their hands and set it against the compass of the sky. But the pyramid is more than geometry. Its passages align with Sirius, the brightest star in the heavens, the star whose rising marked the life-giving floods of the Nile. For the Egyptians, Sirius was no ordinary point of light. It was sacred, celestial, a beacon guiding both harvest and soul. To align stone with star was not symbolism, it was a bridge, a way for the pharaoh's spirit to ascend, to become one with the eternal order of the cosmos. Across the seas in Mesoamerica, the Maya built with equal wonder. Their calendar, astonishing in its precision, traced not just the sun and moon, but the wanderings of planets across the night sky. At Chichen Itza, the pyramid of Kukulkan is aligned so perfectly with the equinox sun that a serpent of shadow descends the steps twice each year, slithering toward the earth in a spectacle of stone and light. This was no accident. It was a marriage of heaven and earth, a declaration that time itself could be inscribed into architecture. But Egypt and Mesoamerica were not alone. In England, the stones of Stonehenge frame the solstices, capturing the first light of summer and the fading light of winter. In Cambodia, the temples of Angkor Wat rise in alignment with the stars and the cycles of the heavens, vast stone mandalas reflecting the universe itself. In Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, streets and pyramids align with celestial events as though the entire city were built to mirror the stars above. The Andes tell their own story. The Inca, masters of stone and sky, oriented their cities to track the sun's path and the constellations they called upon for planting, ritual, and renewal. High in those mountains, the lines between earth and sky blur, and the stones themselves seem to hum with alignment. And even in the far reaches of the Pacific, Polynesian voyagers crossed vast oceans without compass or map, guided only by the stars. They read the heavens as if it were a living book, one that told them not only where they were, but who they were. The stars were not simply points of light to these cultures. They were woven into the very fabric of existence. They marked cycles of birth and death, the times of planting and harvest, the rising and falling of empires. To align stone with star was to declare harmony with a cosmic order greater than kings and kingdoms. And so, across continents and centuries, a pattern emerges. The ancients were not merely astronomers. They were cosmologists, philosophers, dreamers who believed that by placing their monuments in perfect harmony with the heavens, they were tuning themselves to the heartbeat of the universe. To them, the stars were alive, speaking a language not of words, but of light, rhythm, and return. What if this was the true inheritance of the lost civilization? Not only their mastery of stone and resonance, but their intimate bond with the cosmos itself, a bond we have only begun to remember. I carried the same dreamlike cadence, expanding with Stonehenge, Teotihuacan, Angkor Wat, and Polynesian navigation to give it a global sense of unity. If the ancients aligned their stones with the stars, perhaps it was not only to mark the seasons of planting and harvest, but to measure something far greater, something vast, subtle, and enduring, the great cycles of time written across the heavens themselves. Modern astronomy calls it the precession of the equinoxes, a slow wobble of the Earth's axis that completes one circle roughly every 26,000 years. To us, it is a technical detail, a movement so gradual that it takes millennia to notice. But to the ancients, it may have been the heartbeat of eternity, a cosmic clock by which entire ages were measured. The Egyptians watched the rising of Sirius and the shifting of Orion. The Maya carved into stone their awareness of great cycles, counting not years but epochs. The Hindus spoke of the yugas, ages of gold, silver, bronze, and iron, each lasting thousands of years, each ending in destruction and renewal. The Greeks too told of a golden age, a silver, a bronze, and finally the age of iron, a descent into forgetfulness before the turning of the wheel. Could it be that all of these traditions are describing the same thing? The slow drift of the heavens, the great cosmic clock ticking silently above us, marking not just the passage of time, but the rise and fall of civilizations? When we look at monuments like the Great Pyramid or the temples of Angkor Wat, we see alignments that only made sense at certain points in the distant past, as if the builders were marking not just their present moment, but anchoring themselves to a larger rhythm, a reminder of where they stood in the grand cycle. What if these alignments were messages, whispers to the future? Remember the cycle, remember the turning, remember what comes next. If so, then the flood may not have been an isolated event, but part of a pattern, a cleansing that comes when one great cycle ends and another begins. The myths of cataclysm, carried across cultures, may not simply be stories of past destruction, but warnings of recurring change. And here we stand, beneath the same stars, watching them slowly shift in their places as they have always done. The ancients may have tried to tell us, nothing is permanent, not even civilizations. Ages rise, ages fall as the heavens turn. To read the stars was not only to know the future of the crops or the fate of kings, it was to glimpse the destiny of humanity itself. Perhaps this is why the stars were sacred. They were not merely distant fires, but the keepers of memory, the markers of cycles, the guardians of time. And in aligning their stones with the heavens, the ancients aligned themselves with eternity. This flows like a soft meditation on time and cycles, bridging myth and astronomy. But if the ancients truly understood the cosmos in such profound ways, where did that knowledge come from? Did they spend countless generations watching the skies, patient and unblinking until the stars revealed their secrets? Or did they inherit this wisdom, passed down from a far older, far more advanced civilization that had already mapped the heavens long before? The thought may seem bold, but it is not without foundation. The Egyptians, the Maya, and so many others left behind monuments whose precision defies what we expect of their age. Their alignments, their calendars, their understanding of cycles, these are not the marks of a people fumbling in the dark. They suggest access to knowledge beyond their time. One possibility is that this wisdom was carried across the ages by survivors of the Great Flood. Imagine them, scattered, broken, yet holding fragments of a vanished world. Through ritual, through whispered teaching, through stone set upon stone, they preserved what they could. Encoded in monuments, hidden in myths, woven into symbols, remnants of a cosmic memory waiting to be found. Perhaps much of it slipped away, lost to silence and ruin. Yet traces endure, in legends of starborn gods, in temples aligned to distant constellations, in phrases so old they feel eternal. Fragments that hint at a science not of machines, but of resonance, geometry, and harmony. It is also worth wondering if that lost civilization had instruments we cannot even imagine. Could they have built telescopes of crystal or metal long since swallowed by the sea? Could they have charted celestial mechanics so precisely that they predicted events far into the future? If they did, that knowledge may still echo, buried in sacred texts, etched in forgotten symbols, or hidden in the very proportions of their monuments. The flood may have swept their cities away, but what if it also marked a reset far greater than physical destruction, a cosmic erasure, wiping not only their structures but their understanding? A clean slate for humanity, forced to begin again with only shards of memory. The survivors rebuilt, but their knowledge was incomplete. Over centuries, even those fragments faded. Temples crumbled into ruins. Alignments lost their meaning. The purpose of their monuments became stories, their wisdom reduced to myth. And yet, we are still left with haunting questions. Did the ancients truly see the stars as we do, or did they know something deeper, something more profound? Knowledge that slipped beneath the waters of the flood, but waits, even now, to be rediscovered. Could the stars themselves hold keys not only to our past, but to our future? There is an ancient phrase whispered across traditions, as above, so below. A reminder that heaven and earth mirror one another, and that the dance of the stars is reflected in the patterns of our own world. For the ancients, this was no mere philosophy. It was practical, embodied in their architecture, their rituals, their ways of life. To live was to live in harmony with the cosmos. They understood the earth not as a dead stone adrift in space, but as a participant in a larger cosmic rhythm. And so were they. They placed their monuments not randomly, but as notes in a song tuned to the vibrations of earth and sky. Some believe that the civilization before the flood held an even deeper grasp of this truth. They may have understood the frequencies, the energies, the subtle vibrations that flow through the planet. What if they knew how to speak to the earth itself, using sacred geometry, resonance, and sound as their language? What if the pyramids and temples were not only stone, but messages, structures encoded with a universal language capable of tapping into the forces that govern the world? It may sound incredible, yet when we remember that cultures across the globe, from Egypt to the Andes, from the Maya to the Chinese, built their great works in harmony with both earth and sky, The idea no longer feels impossible. Their temples, pyramids, and stone circles were more than monuments. They were bridges between earth and star, human and cosmos, past and future. If the ancients spoke to the earth through resonance and vibration, then sacred geometry may have been their language, a code written not in words but in patterns, spirals, ratios, circles, and triangles recurring again and again from the smallest seashell to the vast arms of galaxies. To us, they are symbols of beauty. To them, perhaps, they were keys. The golden ratio, the Fibonacci spiral, the perfect circle, these appear not only in nature, but in the design of temples, pyramids, and stone circles. It is as if the builders were echoing the forms of creation itself, mirroring the order of the cosmos in stone. The Great Pyramid embodies ratios found in planetary cycles. Stonehenge encodes lunar and solar rhythms. The temples of Angkor mirror the constellation of Draco. Across continents, across ages, the same mathematical fingerprints appear. What if this was no accident? What if geometry was the bridge, the universal code that allowed humans to align with forces greater than themselves? By shaping stone into patterns that reflected the sky, perhaps the ancients believed they were bringing heaven down to earth. The temple was not simply a place of worship. It was a tuning fork, resonating with the music of creation. Even in the myths, echoes of geometry appear. The mandalas of India, the flower of life carved into Egyptian stone, the intricate patterns of Islamic art, all speak the same silent language. A recognition that creation itself is built upon symmetry, vibration, and number. To walk through these spaces was not only to enter a building, but to step into harmony with the cosmos. Could it be that the lost civilization before the flood understood this language more deeply than we can imagine? That their monuments were not only functional, but alive with meaning? Resonant machines, tuned to the geometry of the earth and the stars? If so, then sacred geometry was more than art. It was a science of connection, binding humanity to the planet, to the heavens, and perhaps even to the mysteries beyond both. And perhaps this is why so many remnants still hum with a strange energy when we stand before them. Machu Picchu at dawn, the Great Pyramid at night, the stone circles under a solstice sun, they awaken something deep in us, something older than memory, as though the stones are still singing, still whispering in the only language that has never been forgotten, the geometry of creation itself. If geometry was the language, then sound may have been its voice. The ancients seemed to understand that vibration was not just a property of sound, but the foundation of creation itself. Every stone, every star, every living thing hums with frequency. To them, this was not abstract theory. It was something to be harnessed. Imagine the great stones of Puma Punku or Baalbek weighing hundreds of tons. How were they moved? Perhaps not by brute force, but by resonance. Some traditions speak of priests chanting in unison, of horns and drums echoing through valleys, of frequencies so powerful they lifted stones from the earth, as though gravity itself were lulled to sleep. Legends from Tibet to the Andes whisper of such feats, where sound itself was a tool. Modern experiments suggest that vibration can alter matter, that the right frequencies can cause sand to form patterns, water to dance, or objects to levitate. What if the ancients knew this? What if they used resonance not only to shape stone, but to heal the body, to focus the mind, to open the spirit? Sacred geometry gave them the blueprint. Sound gave them the key. Together, they may have formed a science we have almost forgotten, one where temples were not simply places of worship, but resonant chambers, amplifying chants and tones until the walls themselves seemed to vibrate. The Great Pyramid, with its strange acoustics, may have been more than a tomb. The Hypogeum of Malta, with its deep resonant chambers, is said to alter brainwaves even today. It is as if the ancients discovered a hidden truth, that the universe is music, and that by learning its notes, one could shape reality itself. Healing, building, even opening gateways between earth and sky, these may have been applications of a knowledge too subtle for us to grasp, yet too powerful to have survived unchallenged. The flood may have swept away their cities, but perhaps it also silenced their instruments. Yet echoes remain, in chants, in mantras, in the ringing of bells, in the way a cathedral fills with sound. Fragments of a harmonic technology still ripple through our world, waiting for us to listen. And perhaps one day we will rediscover what they knew, that sound, vibration, and geometry are not separate things, but three threads of the same fabric, the music of creation itself. If the ancients could shape stone with sound and pattern, perhaps their greatest achievement was not in what they built, but in what they became. For vibration does not only move matter, it also moves the mind. Across the ancient world, temples and chambers were designed not only with stone, but with silence and echo. Step inside the hypogeum of Malta and your voice changes, resonating at frequencies that alter brain waves. In the temples of Egypt, the geometry of the chambers amplifies low tones until they seem to sink into your very bones. In the Andes, stone corridors hum when the wind moves through them, as if the earth itself is speaking. What if these were not accidents? What if the ancients crafted their sacred spaces to tune consciousness, to quiet the chatter of the mind and open it to something greater? Chants, drums, and mantras are found in nearly every culture. Their rhythms are hypnotic, designed to slow the breath, to deepen awareness, to carry the soul into realms unseen. To us, they are rituals. To them, perhaps, they were technologies, tools to shift perception, to open the gates between the human and the divine. Some traditions tell of initiates lying within stone chambers, surrounded by sound, bathed in vibration until visions came. Others speak of priests and shamans who used resonance to journey beyond the body, to travel through the stars, to commune with beings of light. Could it be that consciousness itself was the frontier of their science? That they knew the mind was not confined to the brain, but a receiver, a spark tuned to the frequencies of the cosmos? The phrase "as above, so below" takes on new meaning here. For if the body is an instrument, then the mind is its song, and the cosmos is the orchestra. The ancients may have learned to play this music deliberately, aligning themselves with the harmony of creation. And perhaps this is the true secret, buried beneath flood and ruin, that the lost civilization before us was not only advanced in stone and star, but in spirit. They may have known how to awaken within, how to expand consciousness until the line between human and cosmos disappeared. If so, then their temples were not only monuments, but mirrors, reflections of an inner journey, reminders that the greatest mysteries are not only in the sky above, but in the vast universe within. If the ancients truly mastered the art of tuning consciousness, then perhaps it was not only to quiet the mind, but to open a doorway through which they could reach beyond the human, into contact with something more. Across the myths of the world, we hear whispers of beings who came from the stars, who walked among mortals, who taught language, law, astronomy, and art. The Egyptians spoke of Thoth, the keeper of wisdom. The Sumerians of the Anunnaki, descending from the heavens. The Maya of the feathered serpent, a god who taught them how to live in harmony with the cosmos. To some, these are simply gods. To others, they are memories of contact, encounters between humanity and a higher intelligence. But what if these encounters were not physical landings from distant worlds, but meetings of minds, opened through resonance and consciousness? When the ancients entered their temples, chanting, vibrating, aligning their bodies with the geometry of the cosmos, perhaps they were not worshiping. Perhaps they were calling. Visions of beings bathed in light, voices whispering knowledge beyond their time, shapes and symbols pouring into their minds like gifts. Could these have been hallucinations? Or were they transmissions, messages from intelligences beyond Earth, woven into the fabric of the universe itself? Some say the stars are not just suns, but living entities. Others say the gods were not gods at all, but travelers or teachers or survivors of a world that came before. Whatever the truth, the consistency of these myths across continents is striking. Cultures that never met, separated by oceans, tell of luminous beings who came in times of darkness, who guided humanity, and who vanished when the flood swept the world away. And perhaps if the flood was a reset, it was not only the loss of cities, but the severing of this connection. The survivors remembered only fragments, stories of gods carved in stone, sung by firelight. The rest slipped into silence. Yet still, echoes remain. In altered states, in visions, in dreams, people even today report beings of light, visitors from beyond, voices that seem both strange and familiar. Could it be that the door has never fully closed, that the ancients left us the keys hidden in geometry, sound, and story, waiting for us to remember how to use them? If so, then the myths of gods and star beings may not be fantasies. They may be memories, echoes of a time when humanity was not alone, when the veil between earth and sky was thinner, when knowledge flowed freely from the stars. And if that is true, then perhaps the greatest secret of the lost civilization is not just what they built, but who they spoke with in the silence between the stars. They were raised with a knowledge that went beyond stone and mortar, an attunement to the living rhythm of the earth itself. The ancient Egyptians, for instance, shaped their pyramids not only with an eye to the heavens, but also with an awareness of the planet's hidden lines of power. These lines, sometimes called ley lines, or dragon lines, are said to weave a great lattice across the globe, connecting sacred sites and natural wonders alike. Along these invisible currents of energy, countless ancient structures were placed, as though humanity was laying its heart against the pulse of the earth. In China, this understanding emerged in the practice of feng shui, a wisdom that saw the land itself as alive, breathing with currents of qi. The careful placement of homes, temples, and even graves was thought to shape the harmony of the living and the dead, to open pathways for energy to flow, and to quiet disruptions before they could take root. In this way, the ancients were not simply building, they were listening, conversing with the earth, shaping their world in dialogue with forces both seen and unseen. Many believe this knowledge of energy, of Earth's living breath, may have been carried forward from an even older age, a civilization long forgotten that knew how to read the very language of the planet. Echoes of this understanding can still be found in the geometry of their monuments. Sacred geometry, the study of patterns that appear again and again in nature, was not mere ornament to these cultures. It was a code, a map, a bridge between matter and spirit. Spirals, ratios, and perfect alignments were seen in seashells, in galaxies, in the branching of trees, and the ancients mirrored these patterns in their sacred works. The pyramids of Egypt are perhaps the most enduring example. Their proportions echo mathematical harmonies, their angles pointing not only to the stars above, but to the steady beat of Earth's own cycles. To many, the pyramid is more than stone. It is a resonant form, a beacon of order rising from the sands, gathering and amplifying the deep forces of heaven and earth alike. This mystery was not Egypt's alone. Across the ocean, the Maya built their own cosmic instruments. At Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of Kukulkan stands as a testimony to this union of sky and earth. On the equinox, shadows gather upon its steps, forming the writhing body of a serpent that seems to descend from the heavens to touch the ground. This was not mere spectacle. It was a living calendar, a dialogue with the cycles of growth and decay, a bridge between the human and the eternal. And still, the pattern repeats. In Europe, the stones of Stonehenge and Karnak rise in deliberate alignments, their arcs and circles tracing the solstices and equinoxes, the turning of seasons, the eternal march of time. These were not random constructions. They were messages left in stone, reminding all who stood before them that life was not separate from the sky, nor from the earth beneath their feet. It is as though the ancients spoke a language of pattern and place, of shadow and light, of resonance and rhythm. A language that told them where to build, how to align, and how to listen to the song of the world itself. The stones at Stonehenge, placed with such care, suggest that its builders held a profound understanding of the earth's rhythms. They did not set these monoliths at random. They aligned them with the solstices and equinoxes, weaving stone and sky into a single calendar. In this way, Stonehenge became more than a monument. It was both observatory and temple, a place where people could stand at the edge of the earth and watch the heavens move, knowing they too were part of the same eternal cycle. Across the world, we see the same pattern. The ancients were not passive watchers of the natural world. They were participants in its song. They knew that the stars above and the soil beneath were not separate realms, but threads of the same tapestry. Through sacred geometry, through careful alignments, through resonance, they learned to speak with the universe itself. And yet something changed. The flood, whether by sea, storm, or cosmic hand, swept away not only cities and temples, but also the delicate knowledge of how to draw upon the earth's energy. Still, fragments endured. Survivors carved clues into stone. They told stories by firelight. They performed rituals that echoed patterns they no longer fully understood. What was once science became myth. What was once knowledge became legend. That knowledge, though, was never fully gone. It was hidden, preserved in secret societies, encoded in texts written in symbols and riddles, passed from hand to hand, from temple to temple, through architecture that carried whispers of a forgotten language. The tantalizing possibility remains that the ancients left us a key, a secret that, if rediscovered, could transform the way we live. Could their wisdom solve the problems of our own time? Could it ease our hunger for energy, heal our broken relationship with the earth, and remind us that harmony is possible? If so, then the flood was not only destruction, it was transformation, a veil drawn across memory, waiting for us to lift it again. And when that veil is lifted, perhaps we will realize that the earth has been speaking all along, whispering through stone and star, waiting for us to listen. But another question lingers. If an advanced world was truly lost, then what or who remained after the waters receded? For even in catastrophe, traces endure. Scattered myths, odd artifacts, languages with no clear beginning, and always, again and again, the figure who appears in every culture. A sage, a teacher, a stranger who comes from the sea or the sky, bearing knowledge. Some called them gods, others said they were giants or men of strange form and great wisdom. In every story, these beings become the seed of the new world. Perhaps they were not gods at all, but survivors, fragments of the old civilization, carrying what knowledge they could into the dawn that followed the flood. The pattern is too precise to dismiss. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, comes from across the sea, teaching agriculture, medicine, and the movements of the heavens. In the Andes, Viracocha rises from Lake Titicaca after the flood, gathering scattered peoples and gifting them the skills of civilization. In Egypt, Thoth, with the head of an ibis, gives writing, architecture, and mathematics. In India, Manu survives the waters by following the guidance of a divine fish, and from him a new world is born. In Sumeria, Oans, half man, half fish, emerges from the sea to teach the secrets of knowledge forbidden to mortals. These are not isolated stories, they are echoes repeating across continents that never met. And always the lesson is the same. After the flood, someone came. Someone who remembered. Even more striking than their appearance is what they brought. They did not simply comfort survivors, they taught. Agriculture, writing, astronomy, engineering, the skeleton of civilization itself. And not once, but everywhere, across oceans and ages, the gifts are the same in the same order. If these were only myths, why do they align so perfectly? Perhaps the truth is that these figures were not inventors at all, but preservers. They were not introducing new knowledge. They were salvaging fragments of the old world. They carried forward what little they could, passing it to those who remained. In this light, the civilizing gods may not have been divine, but human, the last survivors of a vanished age. And so the theory grows, that the world was not civilized once, but re-civilized, rebuilt after ruin by survivors of the flood. Not lone wanderers, but a remnant of a lost people, determined to ensure that something endured, even if only fragments, so that humanity might rise again. They were custodians of memory, remnants of a world undone, engineers, astronomers, builders, healers, individuals who carried within them the intellectual DNA of a lost civilization. In a shattered and silent world, they became the culture bearers, planting seeds of knowledge where they could. And in time, those seeds sprouted into the first civilizations we officially recognize: Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley. But if these survivors truly walked the earth, where had they come from? And how had they endured what drowned the rest? Some imagine them escaping to the highlands, far from the coasts where the flood struck hardest. Others whisper that they fled into the deep earth, into caverns, labyrinths, and hollow mountains whose doorways are still preserved in myth and sacred architecture. The Hopi people tell of being led underground by ant-like beings during a great time of destruction. Tibetan monks speak of Agartha, a radiant city beneath the Himalayas, lit by a sun that never sets. In European esoteric traditions, legends of inner earth civilizations persist, waiting patiently beneath our feet. Could it be that after the waters rose, the survivors went below, guarding their knowledge until it was safe to emerge again? And what of the knowledge they carried? Surely, much was lost, untranslatable, unteachable, or forgotten with time. Yet fragments endured. The earliest records of humanity's great civilizations do not read like invention. They read like rediscovery. The first Sumerian tablets do not describe the creation of the wheel. They show it already in use. The earliest Egyptian inscriptions are not fumbling experiments in pyramid building. They begin with mastery. The Vedas of India are not tentative steps toward philosophy. They open with complexity, as though compiled from something far older. So how was this knowledge preserved? Myths suggest many answers. In some tales, wisdom was stored on indestructible tablets, stone, gold, even crystal. In others, it was inscribed into the very structures themselves, temples, pyramids, observatories. These were not only sanctuaries of worship, but vaults of encoded information. Geometry, alignment, proportion, all serving as containers of truth, patiently waiting for eyes that could read them. In ancient Egypt, legends speak of the books of Thoth, sacred writings that held the foundation of all knowledge, hidden away so mankind would not destroy itself with their contents. In Mesoamerica, the Popol Vuh speaks of past ages and secret wisdom concealed beneath temple floors. In Islamic tradition, stories tell of antediluvian scriptures written by the prophet Idris, often equated with Enoch, hidden before the flood arrived. And then there is Enoch himself. In the apocryphal texts, he is lifted into the heavens by beings of light. There he is shown the mechanics of the stars, the calendar of time, the secret order of earth and sky. He writes it all down in books, and his knowledge becomes both a gift and a curse, too powerful, too dangerous to be freely shared. Could Enoch be a symbolic reflection of the survivor, the sage who carried the last embers of a fallen world into the dawn of a new one? Yet there is another haunting possibility. What if some knowledge was never passed down at all? Not because it was forbidden, but because it could no longer be understood. Imagine wisdom so advanced that it became meaningless in a broken age, like an equation handed to someone who cannot read. And so, scattered across the globe, we find objects that defy explanation, artifacts that seem out of time, disconnected from the cultures in which they were found. They are fragments of something deeper, perhaps relics of a forgotten age, waiting silently to remind us that our history may not be what we think it is. The Baghdad Battery, a simple clay jar, yet one that seems to hum with forgotten purpose. When filled with vinegar or wine, it becomes a galvanic cell capable of producing electricity, centuries before electricity was supposed to exist. Then there is the Phaistos disc, a fired clay tablet etched with a spiral of symbols, its script undeciphered, its language unknown. Some call it a riddle. Others suspect it is a memory, a message left by hands that understood something we have long forgotten. And the Antikythera mechanism, pulled from the depths of the sea, a bronze clockwork computer more than 2,000 years old, able to predict eclipses, the movements of the planets, the dance of the cosmos itself. Alone, each of these artifacts could be called an anomaly, dismissed as coincidence or curiosity. But together, they whisper of a deeper pattern, a hidden toolkit of technology that does not fit the story we have been told. What if these were not inventions created from nothing, but fragments of memory? Leftovers from a civilization washed away, shards of knowledge carried forward in silence. And perhaps the reason we cannot understand them is simple. We have forgotten the paradigm they were born from. Imagine trying to explain the concept of flight to someone who has never seen a wheel. Imagine trying to describe energy to a people who have not yet discovered fire. Without context, knowledge becomes myth. Without understanding, technology becomes indistinguishable from magic. And so, the survivors may have hidden it, coded it, built it into stone, where it could wait in patience for eyes ready to see. Today, we stand at the far end of that silence. The myths remain. The monuments still rise. The sages are not gone, not entirely. They have simply been misnamed. The gods of old, the shining ones, the civilizing heroes. These were not divine phantoms. They were memory itself. Flesh and blood, echoes of a world that once was, and a warning of what could come again. For if there were survivors once, there may be survivors again. And if the next flood comes, whether of water or fire or silence or forgetting, who will carry the seeds forward this time? The deeper we look into the remnants of a lost civilization, the more unsettling the thought becomes. What if the flood was not the end, but only the beginning? What if it was part of a cycle far larger than ourselves, one that ripples outward beyond the earth? What if the true answers, the wisdom passed through the hands of survivors, are not only buried beneath ruins, but hidden in the oceans, written in the skies? The sea has always been an ancient keeper of secrets. its depths remain more unexplored than the surface of the moon. For millennia, the ocean has stood as a barrier, dividing the known world from the unknown. Beneath its shifting waves, myths speak of forgotten gods, drowned temples, and entire civilizations swallowed whole. But what if the flood did not simply destroy? What if it preserved? Cities entombed beneath silt and stone, sealed away, waiting for the day humanity rediscovers them. Evidence for this possibility rises again and again. Across the globe, explorers and researchers have found traces of sunken worlds. Atlantis, the most famous of all, described by Plato as a vast island civilization, destroyed in a single day and night of catastrophic flooding. For centuries dismissed as allegory, Atlantis now feels eerily possible, as underwater ruins emerge across the globe. In the Caribbean, beneath the blue waters of the Bahamas, lies the Bimini Road, a line of perfectly arranged stone blocks stretching across the seabed. Some insist it is natural. Others see the ghost of a sunken city, perhaps even Atlantis itself. Off the coasts of Japan, India, and Cuba, similar structures have been found: submerged walls, terraces, and streets that defy conventional timelines. Geology, too, lends its voice to the story. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggests that around 12,800 years ago, a comet or asteroid struck the Earth, igniting massive climate shifts. Ice sheets melted, oceans surged, megafloods tore across continents, drowning coasts, submerging cities, extinguishing species. And in the aftermath, the last ice age ended and a new era of humanity began. If true, then the flood was not just a story of water. It was a reset, a cosmic turning of the page. And beneath the oceans, beneath our very feet, the first chapters of that erased book may still be waiting. Could this cataclysmic event have been the very flood spoken of in the world's oldest myths? A global disaster that swept away a forgotten civilization, leaving behind only faint traces, scattered stones, half-remembered stories, and fragments of wisdom embedded in myth. Yet the ocean is not the only keeper of secrets. The sky, too, has served as a vast repository of ancient knowledge. For the ancients, the heavens were not merely a canopy of stars to admire at night. They were maps, clocks, and messages, guides to the unseen forces shaping both Earth and life itself. The stars were never regarded as mere points of light. In culture after culture, they were viewed as living keys, symbols that unlocked the deepest mysteries of existence. This is why the alignments of ancient monuments with celestial bodies cannot be dismissed as coincidence. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is aligned with Orion, a constellation linked by the Egyptians to Osiris, the god of the afterlife. The stars of Orion were not just markers of the sky, they were doorways, symbols of the soul's journey into eternity. The Maya, too, designed their cities in harmony with the heavens. Their calendars, astonishing in their accuracy, were based on the precise cycles of the sun, the moon, and the planets. Their Great Pyramid at Chichen Itza does more than stand as stone. It moves with the equinox sun, casting the shadow of a serpent that slithers down the steps, a union of heaven and earth, of cosmic rhythm and human ritual. These feats were not simple observations. They were attempts to listen, to align, and perhaps even to speak with the universe itself. What if the knowledge of the stars was more than symbolic? What if it was a living map, a celestial guide leading to deeper truths and lost knowledge? The idea that ancient civilizations were not just observing the sky, but communicating with it, is as haunting as it is fascinating. Could the flood itself have been more than a natural catastrophe? Could it have been a cosmic reset, a moment when the balance between Earth and the stars shifted, altering the course of humanity? If so, then perhaps the survivors of the flood carried with them fragments of this cosmic knowledge. Perhaps they preserved it in secret teachings, encoding it in temples, pyramids, and stories that echoed across continents. Even now, we can see how sacred geometry was used as a bridge between Earth and sky. The Great Pyramid, for instance, is built on principles of the golden ratio, a constant that appears everywhere in nature, from the spiral arms of galaxies to the whorls of seashells and the arrangement of leaves in a sunflower. This was no accident. By embedding cosmic mathematics into their structures, the ancients were not simply constructing buildings. They were weaving the fabric of heaven into stone, creating places that resonated with both terrestrial and celestial energy. This idea of sacred geometry and cosmic connection is echoed across the world. In temples of Egypt, Mexico, Cambodia, and beyond, architecture reflects more than artistry. It reflects a relationship between human life, the earth beneath our feet, and the sky above our heads. The ancients were not separate from these forces. They lived within them, and their monuments stand as the evidence of that intimate communion. Even sacred texts preserve fragments of this memory. The Book of Enoch speaks of divine beings who descended to teach humanity the secrets of the stars and the movements of the heavens. The Sumerians told of the Anunnaki, beings who came down from the skies bringing with them the gifts of agriculture, metallurgy, and astronomy. And in India, the god Vishnu appears in many forms, one of which is the great fish that saves Manu from the flood, carrying with him not only survival but the wisdom of the age before. Perhaps these are not mere stories. Perhaps they are recollections, distorted over time, yet pointing to a deeper truth. They speak of beings, whether human or divine, who understood the profound connection between earth and sky, beings who preserved fragments of cosmic wisdom, passing them down so that humanity might one day remember what it had once forgotten. The flood, in this telling, is no longer just a disaster. It becomes a hinge in time, an immense moment when the balance between Earth and the stars shifted. When the waters rose and swept across the planet, they buried knowledge beneath mud and stone. Yet, curiously, they also preserved it. They sealed fragments away for a future age, waiting until humanity might be ready, once again to rediscover what had been lost. Seen in this light, the search for the lost civilization transforms into something more profound. It is not merely the quest to unearth ruins of forgotten cities or to examine shards of broken tools. It is a search for a lost paradigm, one that wove together heaven and earth, stone and star, body and cosmos. The flood may have hidden this knowledge, but it did not destroy it. It lingers, encoded in the monuments, whispered in the myths, hinted in the mysteries scattered across the ancient world. And so the haunting question arises: are we ready to rediscover it? Perhaps one day, as we continue to sound the depths of the oceans and reach into the far stretches of the sky, the veil will lift. What we uncover may not only rewrite the past, it may redefine our future. If the flood was the first hammer blow that shattered the ancient world, then fire was its echo. A second wave of erasure, less often spoken of, yet equally transformative. In many flood myths, there is a curious detail easy to overlook. The deluge often follows fire. A sky aflame, smoke billowing, a rain of sparks, then only afterward the waters come. Sometimes the heavens burn before they weep. This reversal has unsettled researchers for decades. What if the flood was not an isolated act of nature, but the inevitable aftermath of a world first seared by fire from above? Geology hints that this is not merely imagination. Around 12,800 years ago, something struck the planet with violent force, a blow that fractured the climate itself. This moment, known to science as the Younger Dryas, was marked by sudden, devastating cold. The Earth had been thawing from the last ice age, but in a matter of decades, the warmth was ripped away. Temperatures in some places plunged by as much as 10 degrees, fields froze, forests died, early agriculture faltered, herds of great mammals vanished, and with them, many human communities. What could have caused such a violent reversal? One theory, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, suggests a shattering explanation. A comet or asteroid, fragmented and furious, may have collided with the Earth or exploded in the atmosphere. Such a strike would have scorched continents with firestorms, shaken the crust with shock waves, and melted ice sheets, unleashing torrents that roared across the land. In this telling, fire came first. Then came the water. Evidence lies scattered in the soil. Across North America, a strange dark layer, carbon-rich mats laced with nanodiamonds and droplets of melted glass, speaks of unimaginable heat. Similar layers appear on other continents, suggesting not a local fire, but a planetary one. It is as though the entire Earth inhaled flame and exhaled silence. Could this be the very moment when the ancient world, perhaps the world before ours, was erased? What makes this theory so compelling is how it resonates with the cadence of the old myths. Fire, chaos, destruction, then cleansing waters, then silence. A rhythm both geological and mythological, like remembered in stone and in story. Yet fire did not only fall from the heavens, it also rose from within. Cataclysms rarely act alone. A blow from the sky could awaken volcanoes, set mountains trembling, stir the seas into monstrous waves. Where water washes away, fire buries. Where flood scatters, lava seals. Entire cities may yet sleep beneath flows of stone, locked in place like insects in amber, preserved by destruction itself. Hints of this lie beneath seas and continents. In parts of the Mediterranean and the Pacific, sonar has traced vast formations beneath hardened sediment, landscapes once alive, later drowned, and then entombed. Perhaps beneath those layers lies not just broken rock, but silent streets, temples, memories. And once more, the stories echo. In cultures across the world, from the fires of Ragnarok to the smoke-filled skies before the Great Deluge, the same refrain repeats. First fire, then water. First burning skies, then the drowning earth. The ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata, does not describe its age ending quietly in floodwaters. Instead, it speaks of a war so fierce that the earth trembles and the sky itself seems to tear open. From the heavens, fire rains down, cities are reduced to ash. Survivors tell of skin peeling from the body like fruit, of riverbeds boiling until water itself turned against life. To some, this is only poetic metaphor. Yet when placed beside the known effects of radiation burns, the words feel hauntingly precise. In Rajasthan, near a site called Jodhpur, scientists have discovered soil laced with radiation at levels similar to those of modern nuclear test ranges. No accepted explanation exists for this anomaly. And yet, once again, the ancient pattern repeats itself: fire, flood, then silence. Meanwhile, in the hills of Anatolia, at a place called Göbekli Tepe, the oldest known temple complex on Earth, something even stranger is found. It is not destroyed by fire or flood. Instead, it is deliberately buried carefully as if by human hands intent on hiding it from the world. The question is, why? What did they fear? What did they know? Perhaps the sages, the survivors of that forgotten civilization, the culture bearers scattered by catastrophe, understood that the surface of the world had become unsafe. That knowledge had to be sealed away not only in stone and symbol, but in deliberate concealment. Göbekli Tepe then becomes more than a temple. It is a time capsule, a whisper from the past wrapped in earth, waiting for rediscovery. And it stirs a deeper question. What else might have been hidden? What other truths lie beneath our feet? Across the globe, there are places where instruments falter, where compasses spin, and gravity itself seems uncertain. These geomagnetic anomalies, curious to modern science, often appear near ancient ruins. Coincidence or design? Perhaps the ancients were not ignorant at all. Perhaps they tapped into energies we have forgotten. Science today confirms that telluric currents, rivers of natural electricity, flow unseen through the Earth's crust. Some engineers have even suggested that ancient megaliths may have acted like vast tuning forks, amplifying and directing these currents. If so, the placement of great stones, Stonehenge in Britain, the Moai of Easter Island, the colossal trilithons of Baalbek, was not arbitrary. Together, they may have formed a planetary grid, a circuit that once pulsed with living energy. And if such a system existed, it may explain why the fire had to come. A civilization able to draw power directly from the earth and the sky without smoke, without fuel, without machines would have seemed godlike to us. And perhaps, like gods, they grew arrogant, or dangerous, or simply inconvenient to forces larger than themselves. Forces that do what they always do. They reset the board. It is easy, perhaps, to dismiss these thoughts as speculation, to fold them into the comfort of myth. Yet history is rarely written by those who remember. It is written by those who survive. And survival often comes with silence, with erasure, with forgetting. Perhaps the real story of our past is not the slow, steady climb of progress we are told, but a cycle of rise, of cataclysm, of rediscovery, fire, flood, memory, again and again. And so, when we read the old myths of burning skies and rising seas, or when we trace the faint outlines of shorelines long vanished, we may not be reading fantasy at all. We may be reading warnings, messages left not by gods, but by people who lived before us, people who understood something we have yet to fully remember. Now, as we stand at the edge of rediscovery, the echoes of their world grow louder. Their monuments call, their myths whisper, and the earth itself seems to ask, will we remember in time, or will the cycle begin again? For centuries, we have carried the comforting belief that we are the pinnacle of human civilization, the summit of a long and patient climb. We imagine our story as a straight line, a gradual ascent from caves and crude tools through fire and farming into cities, empires, and now into the glittering heights of the digital age. We think of ourselves as the culmination, the crown of human progress. But what if we are not standing at the peak of a mountain at all? What if we are simply walking a ring road, a circle that has been traveled many times before? What if our rise is only the latest chapter in a much older story, a story written in cycles of fire, flood, destruction, and rebirth? What if the myths of old, with their tales of worlds ending and beginning again, are not just allegories, but fragments of memory? Warnings, whispered through time. The pattern of cycles. The idea of cyclical time is not new. It runs like a golden thread through the traditions of humanity. The Hindus speak of the yugas, vast ages of time that turn like the wheel of the cosmos. In each yuga, the world is created, sustained, and then destroyed, only to be born anew. The cycle stretches for thousands upon thousands of years, dwarfing any empire, mocking the span of kings and dynasties. The Greeks too carried this rhythm in their myths. They spoke of the four ages: gold, silver, bronze, and iron. The age of gold was a time of harmony, of innocence, of closeness to the gods. But with each passing age, humanity declined, growing more violent, more corrupt, until at last the age of iron consumed the world. And then, destruction. Only after ruin could the wheel turn back toward creation. The Norse told of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, when fire and ice would sweep across the 9 realms, burning and freezing until nothing remained. Yet even in their bleakness, they spoke of renewal. A green world rising again after the ashes cooled. Everywhere, in every tongue, the same pattern emerges: creation, flourishing, corruption, destruction, rebirth. Again and again. And so we must ask, what if these are not merely poetic images? What if they are records? What if humanity has indeed lived through multiple cycles, each one rising higher, reaching further, only to fall again when the floodwaters came, when the fire fell, when the stars themselves seemed to shift in their orbits? What if we are, at this very moment, standing at the cusp of another cycle's end? The blueprints of survival. The ancient sages, the prophets, the mystics, they all seem to know. They foresaw the ending of one world and the birth of another. And in their wisdom, they left behind not just stories, but blueprints. They wove their knowledge into stone, aligning their monuments with the stars so that their meaning would outlast language. They carved it into myths, cloaking truth in allegory so that it could survive in memory even when empires fell. They encoded it in rituals, in symbols, in numbers, in geometry itself. These were not simply stories for the fireside. They were instructions for survival. They were maps through the flood, ladders through the fire. Could it be that we are the generations they were speaking to? Could the rediscovery of this ancient wisdom, buried under sand, drowned beneath the ocean, or hidden in our very consciousness, be the key not only to understanding our past, but to navigating our future? Perhaps the ancient world did not simply collapse. Perhaps it transformed. Perhaps it evolved into us, leaving seeds of wisdom that now press against the soil of our forgetfulness, waiting to sprout once more. The hidden stream of wisdom. Throughout history, there has always been a current of knowledge that runs beneath the surface, like an underground river flowing unseen. From the mystery schools of Egypt to the secret societies of Greece, from the alchemists of medieval Europe to the Sufi mystics of the Islamic world, there has always been a thread, a hidden stream of esoteric teaching. This wisdom was often disguised in parable, wrapped in symbol, preserved in secrecy. It was not for everyone, but for the few who were ready to understand. Could it be that these secret traditions are fragments of the lost civilization, pieces of knowledge carried forward by survivors of the flood, encoded in metaphor and allegory until the time was right for humanity to grasp them once more? If so, then these teachings are not just curiosities of history. They are preparation. They are warnings. They are instructions left for us, the inheritors of this age. The stones still speak across the world. Ancient sites long dismissed as primitive are being re-examined with fresh eyes. Göbekli Tepe, buried by its own builders as though to protect it, stands as a puzzle 11,000 years old. Puma Punku, with its impossibly precise stonework, defies explanation even with modern tools. The Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned to the stars with an accuracy we can barely match, still hums with unanswered questions. For centuries, we dismissed these places as temples, tombs, or curiosities. But what if they were something more? What if they are signals, beacons from another time, calling to us across the ages. And then we ask, are we ready to hear them? Are we ready to pick up where the last civilization left off? Or are we doomed to repeat their mistakes, stumbling again into hubris, into blindness, into destruction? A great awakening. There are those who believe that we stand on the edge of something vast. A great awakening, not only spiritual, but intellectual and technological. They believe that the veils of ignorance are beginning to thin, that we are starting to see the web that connects Earth, cosmos, and consciousness. They remind us that the ancients were not primitive, that the myths of gods descending from the heavens may be echoes of teachers, of survivors, of bearers of knowledge, that the monuments aligned with stars may not be ceremonial but functional, designed to harness energies we have forgotten, that the cycles of destruction may not just be stories but forecasts, the flood, the fire, the silence. They are not only behind us, they may also be ahead. The warning in the myths. Listen closely and you will hear the same refrain echoing across cultures. Survivors, sages, gods and heroes arriving after the waters recede, carrying seeds of knowledge. Quetzalcoatl in the Americas, Viracocha in the Andes, Thoth in Egypt, Oannes in Sumer, Manu in India. Different names, different faces, but always the same pattern. They come after the destruction. They teach the same skills, writing, farming, astronomy, architecture. They plant the seeds of civilization, and then they vanish into legend. Are these mere archetypes, convenient myths, or are they memories of real survivors, custodians of memory, engineers, builders, sages carrying fragments of a world that no longer exists? The cycle today. And now here we stand. Our ice caps melt, our seas rise, the earth groans with unrest, firestorms tear across continents, and the sky itself fills with smoke. Satellites circle above us, charting stars the ancients knew long before us. We live in towers of steel and glass, but we are no different from those who once raised stones to the heavens. If the cycle is real, then we are not the first to climb so high, and we may not be the last to fall. The question is not whether the cycle will turn, the question is whether we will awaken in time. The hidden choice. Perhaps the true secret left for myths and monuments is not simply knowledge of astronomy, energy, or geometry. Perhaps it is a choice. A reminder that cycles do not only destroy, they also renew. That after flood comes fertility, that after fire comes rebirth. If we can remember, if we can listen, if we can uncover what was hidden, not just in stone and soil in ourselves, perhaps we can become not the victims of the cycle, but its stewards. Perhaps that is what the ancients were preparing us for. Not to fear the cycle, but to survive it. To carry forward the seeds of wisdom, so that when the waters rise, when the fire falls, when silence closes over us once more, there will be survivors who remember. And maybe, just maybe, this time we will remember enough. Word count, 2,240. Would you like me to expand this even further into a multi-chapter narrative, like a flowing bedtime audiobook script of 10,000 to 15,000 words, with each chapter diving into a different theme: fire, flood, stars, energy, survivors, so it feels like an epic, continuous journey and slightly expanded version of your piece, keeping the same flow, but giving it more polish and depth. It was a different world then, more connected, more harmonious, and far more attuned to the rhythms of the universe than ours is today. Humanity once lived in step with the stars above, the earth beneath, and the unseen currents flowing through both. As we gaze now toward the heavens, study the mysteries of the soil, and wander through the ruins left behind by ancient hands, we may be standing at the very edge of rediscovery. What was swept away in the Great Flood, what was scorched in the fire that came before, it waits in silence for us to remember. And in unlocking these mysteries, we may come to an unsettling yet profound realization that we are not the first advanced civilization to walk this earth. We may simply be the latest expression in a long, recurring cycle of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Knowledge does not vanish entirely. It recedes, encoded in stone, in myth, in geometry, in the subtle language of the natural world. The flood, the fire, the rebirth of civilization, these are not mere stories of the past. They are warnings, blueprints, and prophecies of the future. The pressing question is this: when the next turning point comes, will we be ready? Will we embrace the wisdom of those who came before us, using it to guide us into a new age of balance? Or will we allow the cycle to repeat once again, condemning ourselves to forget, to fall, and to begin from ashes? For as endless as the cycle may seem, it is punctuated by thresholds, moments of choice. The ancient world, once a radiant beacon of knowledge and innovation, now lies beneath layers of catastrophe, time, and deliberate erasure. Yet the deeper revelation does not come from mourning its destruction, but in realizing the possibility of its rebirth. If the ancients truly harnessed the energies of the earth, if they charted the heavens with impossible precision, if they unlocked secrets of sound, vibration, and resonance that even now elude us, then perhaps they did not leave us ruins alone. Perhaps they left us keys hidden in the alignments of stars, in the patterns of sacred geometry, in the very fabric of the planet itself. And here we stand, on the cusp of rediscovery. The question is no longer simply what was lost, but rather, how much still waits to be awakened? This threshold is not a metaphor. It is real. It is here, at the intersection of modern technology and ancient memory. Today's breakthroughs, whether in energy, astronomy, or the study of consciousness, are beginning to echo the very knowledge long buried. The secrets we seek are not just artifacts of stone and clay. They are insights into the living forces that govern reality itself. These secrets remind us that the Earth is not a dead rock adrift in space. It is alive, responsive, and capable of communication with those who know how to listen. They whisper through the cycles of nature, through the sweep of the constellations, through the magnetic hum that pulses unseen beneath our feet. The ancients understood this, and they built in harmony with it. Their monuments were not only structures, they were instruments. They amplified energy, tuned resonance, and served as bridges between earth and sky. This wisdom was never meant to be forgotten. It was meant to be rediscovered in the right time. Flood and fire were not endings, but pauses, resets in the great rhythm of history. Survivors carried fragments of knowledge forward, not just as keepers of memory, but as messengers for the future. That future, perhaps, is ours. So, how do we reconnect? How do we bring back this lost knowledge? The first step is to realize it was never truly gone. It is encoded in the ruins of temples, in the myths of cultures scattered across the globe, in the cycles of the natural world itself. The stars, the earth, the oceans, they are not separate realms. They are pieces of a greater whole, woven together in a symphony of energy and motion. Look closely at the monuments of the past, the pyramids of Egypt, the temples of Angkor Wat, the stone circles of Britain. These were never merely places of worship. They were designed as tools, living systems aligned to both earth and cosmos. They harnessed the invisible flows of energy, turning architecture into conversation with creation itself. In our own age, modern science is beginning to rediscover what the ancients already knew. Researchers study the Earth's magnetic fields, the oscillations of sound, the influence of vibration. Explorers uncover hidden chambers, star-aligned corridors, and intricate codes embedded in stone. Slowly, we are learning to listen again, to hear the whispers of the past and understand the language of those who came before. This journey, however, is not about archaeology alone. It is about preparation. The wisdom that was preserved through flood and fire is not a relic. It is the foundation of a new world, a world where humanity can finally live in harmony with the planet, drawing energy from it without harm, aligning with cosmic rhythms rather than fighting them. This vision is no utopia, it is possibility. But it requires us to shift our consciousness, to stretch beyond the narrow limitations of modern thinking. It requires humility before the ancients, and courage to embrace what they preserved. Rediscovery is not a single moment. It is a process, a long path we are already walking. Each discovery, each fragment decoded, brings us closer to both our past and our potential. We're not the first to stand here, gazing into the unknown. We are only the latest chapter in a story that has been written and rewritten across millennia. Yet this time, we have the chance to break the cycle, to learn from the falls of the past, to embrace wisdom instead of arrogance, to build not just a new civilization, but one in true balance. And so the question lingers, sharp as ever, will we be ready? The veil between past and present grows thinner with each step forward. For centuries, humanity has wandered the earth, eyes tilted upward, yearning for forgotten knowledge. Floods, fires, celestial upheavals, these were not isolated events. They were echoes of a cosmic rhythm, reverberating across time. Now, at the precipice of rediscovery, we must decide what this knowledge means for us today. The answers will not be found in ruins alone, nor in dusty texts. They lie in our relationship with the living earth. For the ancients were not just masters of the stars, they were masters of the soil, the waters, the winds. They understood the planet not as a stage, but as a partner. Perhaps it is time we remembered the same. And in that reset, something tender was spared. Seeds of memory, little embers of knowing, tucked into story and stone so they would not go out. Those embers are glowing again. You can feel it in the quiet places, along old pilgrim roads and tree-lined ridgelines, at tide pools and dry riverbeds, beneath the lintels of weathered sanctuaries where sunlight falls in careful squares. The earth hums there in a low, steady way, and if you stand still long enough, if you breathe a little slower than usual, you can sense how the ground remembers. So our task is gentler than conquest and braver than denial. It is to listen, to practice the old arts of attention, of walking at dawn, of noting the path of the moon window to window, of hearing the wind change and understanding what it asks. The ancients would call this apprenticeship to place. They knew that knowledge is not owned. It is entered like a field at the edge of evening, careful of what grows there. Listening does not mean passivity. It means alignment. When we align, we stop pushing against the grain of the world and begin moving with it. We notice that certain shapes, spirals, hexagons, right-angled triangles, seem to invite harmony. We notice that certain hours of day open doors more easily than others. We notice that music, a voice, a drum, a bell, changes the feel of a room, a family, a town square. And from these small observations, an old future begins to bloom. Imagine for a moment cities that breathe. People move through them as seawater through kelp, everything swaying, giving space. Imagine gardens laid out not only for food, but for resonance. Trees planted at intervals that carry birdsong like a corridor of light. Courtyards that hold warmth in winter and cool in summer because their proportions are right and kind. Imagine schools where children learn constellations the way they learn their names, where they keep a sky journal beside a notebook of numbers and a book of poems, and none of it is in competition. Imagine clinics where sunlight is part of the prescription, where water is listened to as well as tested, where grief is given rooms with windows that face east. This is not fantasy. It is what becomes possible when the old languages return. Geometry as gratitude, astronomy as kinship, engineering as care. In such a world, energy is taken the way a harp takes wind, by being tuned. Power is not wrested but invited, and because it is invited, it does not break things on the way in. To move toward that world, we will need stewards rather than heroes. Stewards say, let us build with the river, not against her. They say, let this roofline follow the path of winter sun. They ask the hill where the road should rest. They ask the people who live at the hill's foot what the hill is called, and then they use that name. Stewards replace extraction with exchange and speed with timing. They are not perfect, they are patient. There will be those who say none of this is practical. But practicality is simply alignment at a useful scale. When a home admits breeze and keeps out harsh heat, bills fall, tempers ease. When street trees are planted along an old lay, call it corridor, call it fault line, call it current. Crime drops, birds return, sleep gets better. When meetings begin with silence, decisions take less time. When the city hum is layered with small pieces of music, fountains, bells, even laughter, people walk more and worry less. These are not miracles. They are physics with manners. We will also need thresholds, clear, gentle rituals by which communities remember themselves, not ceremonies of spectacle, but of attention. The first night a child learns the Orion line, the morning a park is given its true name back, the dusk when the neighborhood turns off screens and shares tea and sky. Thresholds stitch time. They tell memory where to roost. And in a world that has forgotten itself before, the act of remembering becomes a civic duty. Of course, there will be work with stone and wire and policy. There will be blueprints and budgets and patient negotiations. But beneath all of it, there will be the quieter labor of tuning homes and hospitals, farms and schools, habits and calendars to the measures that have always been here. If you want a place to begin, begin small. A bowl of water in a windowsill to notice the way light walks across it. A notebook by the door where you mark the wind, a map of your night sky taped above your desk. These are keys. They make the larger locks turn more easily. And when the door opens, and it will open the way spring does, a little shy and then all at once, we must remember that knowledge without tenderness becomes machinery. The ancients guarded against that by pairing skill with story. Every craft had a myth that reminded the hands what the heart already knew. We can do the same. Codes of conduct that require quiet as well as competence, designs that include a place for grief, technologies that choose repair over replacement whenever possible. If you need a proverb for the road ahead, take this one. Build as though your great-grandchildren will sleep in the shadow of what you raise, and your great-grandparents will bless it when they pass by. It is a way of saying that time is a circle that moves forward, and the living stand at its luminous overlap. The flood taught us that all things can be washed away. The fires taught us that all things can be made too bright to bear. Let the next lesson be about balance. Water that remembers, flame that warms and warns but does not devour, stone that sings at the right pitch so that people and birds and bees can find their way home. Let governance learn to count the invisible, shade, quiet, trust. Let economics learn to include what is priceless, time with elders, time with children, time with the sky. And in the late hours, when worry comes, because worry always comes, return to the simplest practice. Lay a hand on the ground, or on your own chest if the ground is far, and listen for the slow drum of the world. Match your breath to it. The body learns quickly. The mind follows. In that small act, you step back into the oldest conversation. You say to the earth, I am here. And the earth replies, in pulse and warmth, I know. From that knowing, plans can be made. From that knowing, bridges that do not crack, harvests that do not exhaust, energy that does not scald the future. From that knowing, a humility that keeps us from opening doors just because we finally found the hinges. We will still explore. Of course we will. Curiosity is part of our song, but we will explore like guests who love the house. If the golden age lives ahead rather than behind, it will not arrive with trumpets. It will arrive the way sleep arrives when you stop trying too hard, softly, thoroughly, in waves. A street of windows opening to the same breeze. A grandmother teaching a child the name of a star, and then the name of a weed, and then a recipe for rain. A carpenter setting a beam by listening for the pitch that means true. A choir of trades and traditions, science and story moving in one patient rhythm. The old cycle is turning, not toward panic, but toward presence. Not toward erasure, but toward recall. The seeds the flood could not carry away are swelling in the dark, clever with their instructions, waiting for warmth and timing. We are the warmth. We are the timing. We are the ones who choose whether these seeds meet stone or soil. So let us choose soil. Let us be gardeners of memory, engineers of mercy, astronomers of the everyday sky. Let us build rooms that teach quiet and plazas that teach belonging. Let us measure prosperity by the number of constellations children can name and the number of languages a river speaks as it moves through a town. Let our cleverness be braided to good manners. Let our progress be measured not only in speed, but in song. When you are ready to sleep, take this with you. You are not separate from the pattern you admire. The same geometry that lifts a spire lives in your breath, in the arc of your shoulder as you turn toward rest, in the slow settling of your thoughts. The earth's long music will keep playing whether or not we listen, but when we do, it changes us. And when we change the future. Close your eyes. Imagine the great circles, the ones in stone and the ones in sky, turning with patient grace. Imagine the old knowledge keeping watch like lighthouse beams revolving, touching every shore in time. Imagine the morning we step outside together and feel, without needing words, that the world has welcomed us back into rhythm. Until then, we practice, we listen, we align, and little by little, the door opens. In the end, everything was swept away, but the seeds, tiny sparks of knowing that waited patiently beneath soil, stone, and story. Those seeds are us. We are the carriers of memory, the living continuation of an ancient rhythm. The wisdom of the ancients still breathes, hidden in the geometry of temples, in the alignments of pyramids, in the quiet symbols etched into forgotten stones. It whispers through the turning of the seasons, in the rising of the sun, the cycles of the moon, the ebb and flow of the tides. The flood passed, the fire dimmed, But what endured was more precious than any city or empire. It left us a map, not drawn in ink, but woven into earth and sky, a guide showing us how to step back into harmony with the cosmos. The question before us is not what was lost, but what we will do with what is found. Civilization does not rise with thunder. It does not awaken with the roar of machines. It begins in silence, in an idea rekindled, a pattern rediscovered, a resonance felt more than understood. The awakening of our time will quietly, like roots pressing through concrete, steady and unstoppable. All across the world, people are beginning to listen again, not to noise, but to the earth, to the stars, to their own intuition. The monuments once thought to be tombs are now seen as instruments, as maps of energy, of consciousness. And beneath the hum of modern life, the ancient music plays on, unchanged, eternal, waiting. This remembering does not always arrive in words. Sometimes it comes as a spiral in a seashell echoed in galaxies and storms. Sometimes it comes as a rhythm, the slow beat of a drum, the measured swing of the equinox sun. Sometimes it comes as numbers whispered again and again, 432, 144, 108, reminders hidden in the harmonics of the planet itself. To some, curiosities, to others, instructions. The ancients lived not in conquest of the world, but in concert with it. Their temples were not monuments of pride, but instruments of resonance, tuned to the song of the earth and the stars. And in hearing that song again, we begin to remember the voice that was always ours. The cycle warns us. Forgetting brings fire, flood, and silence. But it also offers choice. We stand now at the threshold, holding the blueprints of balance, waiting to decide. Will we repeat the old mistakes, or will we rise, carrying wisdom forward into light? The ancients did not build only for themselves, they built for us. Their myths, their symbols, their songs were not tales of doom, but instructions for rebirth. How to begin again, but this time without forgetting. And so here we are, not chosen by blood, but by readiness. Not marked by destiny, but by courage. The courage to ask, what came before us? And why was it lost? Now we know, and now we can choose. This is not a return to the past. It is a return to the wisdom of the past, carried gently into a future that can hold it. The age of remembering is not heavy with nostalgia. It is bright, luminous, alive. The flood never truly buried the old world. It only asked us to dig, and in that digging, in the searching, the listening, we become the bridge between what was and what must come. And so the story closes tonight not with an ending, but with an opening. A quiet door already ajar, a soft light already rising, a reminder that we are not alone in this journey. The earth remembers, the stars remember, and slowly we are beginning to remember too. Sleep now, with that knowing in your heart, you are part of the great remembering. The future is waiting, and the light has already begun to shine.